I'd like to call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Chair Moore,
Here.
Alder Spate,
Here.
Mr. Hamburg,
Here.
Ms. Thomas, here, Mr. Stein,
Here.
Ms. Fox,
Here.
Mr. Dorschel,
Here.
and Mr. Holmquist is not here yet.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for March 26, 2018?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any changes, additions, deletions? We're good? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Is there anybody here tonight that is not on the agenda? Okay. Could you fill out?
There wasn't one up there.
I can get them.
And I
Okay.
can, if it's,
Actually, sir, if you could go up to the podium, that would be great. And she's going to get you a form so that we make sure that we have it.
so I'm Steve Griffith with, a member of the Four Lakes Yacht Club. And I actually would prefer to, talk on, when the item, 6E comes up, if it's okay with the council. Because everything that I have to say pertains to that item, which is the roadway project.
It's not a public hearing.
Yeah, it's not a public hearing, so
I
I
can certainly tell you what I'd like to see now is not a problem, but I just want it so it gets carried through to that item.
Okay.
Okay, let me grab my notes.
Did you find forms? Okay, great.
So I was at the Public Works meeting when item 6E came up, and we had some discussion with Josh from Strand and the Public Works people about some changes that we would like to see made. And Josh and his team, I think, did a really nice job of addressing that. I do have a couple of concerns that we brought up at that meeting that I'd also like to get on the record here at this meeting. Which, if you've reviewed the packet, it maybe will make sense to you, but it'll make more sense when you actually get to that part of the agenda. We have some concerns as far as trucks and trailers crossing the bike path, with the bikes on the bike path, but I think there's adequate sight lines that have been left available, but I think there needs to be adequate signage put up, which we talked about at Public Works. So I'd just like to make that point. I know it's not the city's job to keep businesses open, but I don't think the city wants to be responsible for closing a business either. So currently, and I realize that some of our parking spots are in the right-of-way and have been since 1950, whatever. Currently, we have 30 stalls that are available to our restaurant and to the yacht club. And with the new plan, it's going to be reduced down to 15, which is a significant cut. So if possible, I'd like to see possibly some sort of signage that would address the fact that these are public parking stalls and not parking for the, just for the apartment buildings, so that our restaurant can still operate with some semblance and with the same occupancy permit that they're looking at now, because those 30 stalls those 15 stalls that we're going to lose is part of the reason that they have the occupancy permit that they have. Now, Josh did a really nice job of the additional parking that's going to be on the street and the additional parking that's going to be in that other roadway, which is going to look like a parking lot. So I think there's adequate parking unless the apartment dwellers decide that they don't need their underground spots and they're all going to park on the surface parking lot. So that's going to be a big concern for us. The other thing is we wanted to ask about access for our building, parking, and our boat ramp during the construction phases, which I know you don't really have any control over, but I'm assuming that the people who are going to be down there are going to provide the best access that they can and not close down the road for any significant length of time, because we have people for the restaurant and for our club that are in and out of there with trucks and trailers and boats and people going to the restaurant. So we'd like to make sure, I realize it's going to be like Monroe Street. There's going to be some issues. And hopefully we can work through those and work together on that rather than butting heads with it. So those are some of our concerns. If you have any questions when you get to that point, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I thank you for letting me get up to speak.
Thank you. Anybody else that is here that is not on the agenda? Okay, great. And again, if you could fill out that form for us, Steve, that would be terrific. We'll close the appearance section and move on to unfinished business. First up, A, public hearing on request by Galway Companies for approval of a revised general development plan, GDP, for Yahara Commons at 802 and 900 West Broadway, 6320 and 6321 Metropolitan Lane, and 6406, 6416, and 6418 Bridge Road to include a hotel use in Phase 3 rather than an office building. Case number 2005-2018. Gentlemen? Whoever would like to go up to the podium.
I can give an overview first.
Okay.
This was reviewed last at the February 12th Plan Commission meeting, and the commission agreed at that time that we should revise the general development plan as it was approved last summer due to the change from the office use to hotel. And other than that, feedback was generally favorable after reviewing issues like parking, so approval is recommended as listed in the staff report with those two conditions.
Steve?
Hello. So I don't know how much we want to talk about the change in use from an office to a hotel, or if you want Craig to just jump into the hotel and the architecture itself. Like Sonia said, we're asking for a revision in the GDP. The original GDP from way back contemplated an office building on the Phase 3 site. We always had in the back of our mind that we would build an office building there once we found a tenant, and we were able to find a hotel user prior to finding an office tenant. So that is the main reason, I guess, for the change in the use to a hotel versus an office.
I would say let's focus on the change to the hotel, and during the consideration of action and elsewhere, we'll certainly can dive into the larger picture if we need to.
Okay. Great.
So, go ahead and let us know about, what's going on with the hotel and whatever you're going to present.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, why don't you want to talk about the hotel?
Good evening. My name's Craig Sadonico. I'm president of American Architectural Group and American Construction Services, partnering with Galway and Kinseth Hotel Corporation for the development of the 92-room Avid. This is my first appearance in front of you folks, although I know the topic has been put forward in the past. The building elevation we showed down below is a pretty significant change from what Avid's prototype is. I'd say a change in a positive direction. Really take into account several of the materials that are going to be found elsewhere in the Yahara development. The red, let me pull it up here. The red areas are a steel panel that will match. It's the same product that'll be used on some of the apartments next door. The gray area is a cement board paneling LP panel that will match other areas, and the balance of the colors complement as well. We heard loud and clear, no EIFS in Monona. There isn't any EIFS product on the building. So again, we feel that the modifications are warranted. I think Holiday Inn Corporation is going to be happy with the product, and I wouldn't be surprised to find this become more of a prototype than their lower level product that they have out there right now. Be happy to answer any questions. We've got a representative from our engineering firm here as well tonight that can get into the specifics. I draw up pretty pictures and figure out how to build them, and those guys figure out how the sites work together. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have now.
Okay. Do you guys have anything else in the public hearing section of this that you wanted to say before we move on? We
I don't
good?
think so.
Okay, okay.
You know, last time we were here, Bruce Kinseth was here and I
Yeah.
think gave a pretty good overview on what Avid is and, you know, how it operates in the hotel market, how it compares to other hotels that are in the Monona market. And I can't come close to doing as good a job as explaining what Avid is than he did, so.
Okay, great. Is there anybody else here for the public hearing related to the hotel, this particular public hearing? No? Okay, I will close the public hearing section. Move on to B, consideration of action on request by Galway Companies for approval of revised general development plan, GDP, Freehar Commons at 802 and 900 West Broadway, 6320 and 6321 Metropolitan Lane, 6406, 6416, and 6418 Ridge Road to include a hotel use in Phase 3 rather than an office building, case number 2005-2018. Sonia, do you have anything else to kick us off?
I don't have anything to add other than just a reminder that this item B is specifically action on the revised GDP, and then in the next item, we'll talk in more detail about the hotel architecture, site design, et cetera.
Okay, great. Do we have any other discussion? Chris?
Yes. Two things. This is a GDP, so we're talking about generalities, but I think a couple things we talked about in the original GDP were general architecture, not specific. And then we have a parking issue. We always have a parking issue, but if you look at the parking ratios that you submitted, we were underparked for your Phase 1, and we were getting our parking taken care of on this site. Now, by building this site, we don't have that taken care of. And where you really have your surplus parking, according to all the things you submitted, is in Phase 2. Sure. So what's happening is Phase 1 and Phase 3, the two underparked areas are being built first with no allowance for that additional parking that used to be on the site. So I think it's something we need to at least talk about, and I think it'd be more appropriate probably to go through the details during the PIP, but I think it's a condition that has to be talked about in GDP, that there's a parking issue that may need to be addressed during the PIP discussion. I think that would be appropriate, and I think the same type of verbiage for the architectural. We asked for some changes, maybe some, I think we need to discuss architectural, see if, you know, this one as far as we're looking for. So, and then on the original GDP, we talked about base architectural without getting into details. Sure. So for me, I think those two additional conditions for the GDP, just, and we're going to be talking about it in a few minutes, but
Yep.
appropriately, it should get under the GDP to address that.
Okay, great. Kathy, do you have anything? No. No? Rob? Okay. Chad?
No.
Brian?
Nope. Parking discussion will be fun.
Susan?
I just had a question about the implementation of Phase 2 and the plans you gave us. It says 2021, and in the memo we got, it said 2022. I just wondered what the approximate date was for Phase 2.
As soon as possible.
Okay, so it could be, so it's not later than would be not correct.
That would be
You're
not
aiming
later
for
than days, right.
okay. You're aiming for 2021, but it might be later.
I
Okay.
believe 2022 is the development agreement requirement.
That's the development agreement, okay, okay.
No, I have to agree that we have to address the parking and some of those things, but I think Chris's suggestion is a good one.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, is this now considered Phase 3 or Phase 1A or 1B?
It is Phase 3 still. We decided not to complicate everybody's life and just left it as Phase 3.
Okay.
Okay, great. Do I have a move to approve this general GDP?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Can I add a couple?
Yep, yes.
I assume that was with conditions
Yes.
certain by staff. Could we add condition 3, the architectural may need further revisions during the PIP process, and condition 4, that the parking will need to be addressed during PIP approval?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, motion to approve as amended. Do I have a second on the amendment?
I second.
Okay, great. All those in favor, say
Aye.
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 Motion carries. On to section C, public hearing on request by Galway Companies and Kinsep Hospitality Companies for approval of a Phase 3 precise implementation plan, PIP of Yahara Commons for a 92-room Avid Hotel, case number 2006-2018.
Should we jump right into parking?
Jump right in.
Okay. So we did hear you loud and clear on parking. And I know in concept, last time we were here, we talked about maybe a potential shared parking agreement with the bank for overflow parking. And then we also talked about the construction of these 14 stalls in basically the access drive. So our plan, as we've presented in the PIP submittal, does include building these additional 14 stalls, which gets us to 83 stalls for the hotel itself. And, you know, it used to be with a hotel, and I think Bruce talked about this at length last time, it used to be with a hotel, you'd like to be at 1-to-1. So 92 rooms, 92 parks. Over time, that's gone down, but they still try to build it about 1-to-1. So using that theory, we're about 9 stalls short, you know, as in the hotel industry norm, not necessarily the city of Monona requirement, but just the norm of the hotel industry. So what we've done is we've worked out a parking agreement with Monona Bank, where we currently have our office, and they're going to move all their bank operations in there, so that bank building will be all Monona Bank operations going forward. But we worked out something with them where we'll have a shared parking agreement with the bank, with their, I believe, 65 parking stalls, where we'll be able to use those stalls anytime from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then in turn, they'll be able to use our stalls anytime from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. if they have big events, if they have employees that need to park there. You know, sometimes the bank does host business, you know, meetings in the basement, and they have parking issues themselves. So it actually, after talking to them further, it turned out to be a win-win for both of us and entering into a shared parking agreement with them. So we feel pretty confident about the parking situation now. I know by code, you know, we may be short, but I mean, I think with the parking agreement, we surpass what we need. So and I think that was included in our PIP submittal. Does anybody have questions about that before I let Craig talk about the building?
I don't think there's enough parking with this phase 1 and phase 3 right now. And I went through all your tables. You show it almost 100 stalls short. And the shared parking is available, but it's not available during the middle of the day. And what I'm thinking is, to be safe, on the last one, you looked at building an overflow lot on this bank property. And is there an opportunity to build an overflow lot on the phase 2 property? Because the phase 2 is where all your extra parking's coming in. According to your charts, you're 100, anywhere from 70 to 100, depending on whether it's our code or your estimation, over on that one. So is there a way to compensate for that on that lot instead of building it on the bank lot or the hotel lot, which you were originally going to do?
You know, it's not something we ever looked at building a temporary lot on phase 2, because we feel pretty comfortable with the parking. You know, and again, you know, we went through all these parking analysis when we came here for phase 1, right? And part of the issue we have is code is dictating certain requirements, and then there's what do we really need in reality, right? And you know, we have 24,000 square feet of retail. So far, you know, we're about 70-ish% leased on that, and about half of that's office space and half of it's restaurant and retail. So in practicality, you know, code may require, you know, a certain amount of stalls per seat or a certain amount of stalls per commercial, but code doesn't take into account that half of those users are office users during the day and half of them may be there at night and weekends. So, I mean, you know, I understand the concern, but we feel really comfortable that, and we talk about times a day, right? Well, this is almost a perfect cross-parking user, just like we thought the office was a perfect cross-parking user with the retail, right? Because the bank doesn't need stalls at night when we need them for hotel guests. And we, at the hotel, doesn't need stalls during the day when the bank has employees there.
A question about the bank agreement. You said 7 PM to 7 AM?
Right.
What about Saturday and Sunday?
It's every day of the week.
So you
So,
don't,
I mean, technically, I think, the way that it's written right now with, the agreement's not signed yet, but,
you're gonna have a problem on Saturday and Sunday, I think, and the bank
Yeah.
doesn't use the parking.
yeah, so that's a great point. Maybe we can talk to the bank about freeing up Sundays. Right now they've
Saturday
offered.
afternoons are not open either.
Yeah, again, though, the hotel guests, most hotel guests are arriving after, 6 PM.
I just would talk to them about
I
Saturday
think it's a
and
great
Sunday.
idea, and we'll definitely bring that up and see if they'd free up the weekends for us. Because you're right, they're not open past, noon on Saturdays, Chris?
Usually noon,
Yeah.
unless there's
So I
something
don't think
going on in
I don't think they would have any issue with
executive
that.
offices. They could
Yeah.
have
So, I mean,
something on
I would
Saturday.
do,
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. It's a great idea.
So I
Can
go
I
back,
s-
I'm
I
sorry.
was just going to suggest that we hold the questions around the parking or in the public hearing to
You're right, it's a public
specifically
hearing.
to what he's suggesting, and then we can get into
I'm
the
sorry,
debate.
I
when
forgot
we
we're in
get. That's all
public
right.
hearing.
That's all right. I
it's-
appreciate that. So can we hear from the rest of,
Sure.
regarding the rest of the plan during the
Sure.
public hearing phase?
Sure.
I can repeat exactly what I said a few minutes ago, or I can kick it to you guys with questions that you might have. Be happy to do my best to answer regarding architecture.
Okay. And anything else that you guys want to present in the public hearing section related to the PIP before we move on?
actually, we're not supposed to ask you questions during public
Right.
hearing.
Ooh, that's what you just meant. All
Right.
Got it. I want the Parliamentary Procedure Police to come storming in. Good job. I guess I can say that we did get staff comments, commission comments from the February meeting, I believe. And I believe we incorporated the modifications that you were looking for. Certainly be open to other ideas or questions or comments or suggestions, but there's not a little secret back corner of EFS that we're hoping you don't catch. We listened to what you said and implemented what we felt was appropriate.
Great. Okay. Great. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in the public hearing section regarding the PIP before we close the public hearing section? We'll close the public hearing section and move on to consideration of action. Item D, on request by Galway Companies and Kinsett Hospitality Companies for approval of Phase 3 Precise Implementation Plan, CIP, the O'Hara Commons for a 92-room Avid Hotel, case number 2006-2018. Now we can get to the questions.
I'll just,
Those-
approval is
Sonia's-
recommended with the 15 conditions in the staff report, including a copy signed of the shared parking agreement that we were referencing in the public hearing, and among other things. And then I just wanted to point out too that Josh Straka is here from Strand, and he reviewed the site layout, grading, and stormwater management, and can provide an overview of his comments as well.
Okay, I believe you have my comments. There's about 7 pages here. We're not gonna go through each comment. Most of this is pretty minor, some cleanup stuff on the plans, just to make sure we understand things are working. There's a few comments that I think that should be addressed, or that we wanna make sure we get in there. One is on page 3. On page 3, comment 21, we want to make sure it appears that coming up in the 2 handicap parking stalls that front the hotel likely need a handicap ramp. And there just appears to be some discrepancy there, but again, pretty minor. On the utility side, we want to make sure that we understand the stormwater a little bit better. So there's still some questions on the stormwater. That's on page 4 and on page 5. We talk a little bit about that. And that's really the big thing I want to talk about tonight. So as far as stormwater overall for this site, the TSS removal, the total suspended solids, they're achieving about 16.4%. So a standard redevelopment site like this one should achieve 40. Now, when we got into this overall, the idea was to get 40 over the entire redevelopment of the GDP. And on the first site, they're getting 40 alone, and on this site, they're getting 16, which means that if we leave it in that fashion, we got to pick up the rest on our street infrastructure when we put it in. And there's ways to do that, and we've discussed that in the past. But it appears on their landscaping plan, they got some bioretention mix that you'll see kind of up near the street. And if the commission feels it prudent that they get 14 or 40%, we think that it potentially could get done, but they'd have to go back, look at bioretention like they did on the other site, maybe add some more inlets and some control structures that remove some more sediment. And that's kind of the big thing, I think, to determine tonight. Is it okay moving forward with the 16%? Or do we require them to go back and just do some more modeling and see if they can achieve a higher percentage so that, one, the city likely doesn't have to do it in their own right-of-way, and two, the stuff that we're doing in our right-of-way, we can get above and beyond 40% if we want, and showcase that a little bit. We can talk about that later when we talk about the street stuff overall. So that would be my one recommendation, that maybe some decisions made on that tonight, and that comes back to us. Otherwise, the remainder of these comments, I don't think are going to hold up the approval of this at all. It's just some cleanup type stuff and some clarification. And I can go into more detail, but that's just in a nutshell.
Okay. Thank you. Now, questions?
Well, Josh is there. Totally agree with the 40%. Every site we've ever reviewed on a redevelopment, we ask for 40% TSS removal. I don't know why we'd hold this to a lesser standard. And I agree, there's plenty of opportunities to be able to accomplish it there. Sure. So I'm not sure what the reasoning was to just have the 16. One other comment. You're probably aware that the county is requiring framed inlet protection on all their projects anymore. The city of Madison, because they're so close to Wingra on Monroe Street, required framed inlet protection. And I'm just wondering if this would be a good place. It's not a lot of dollars, but a good place for framed inlet protection. And it's a product put out by ADS that really the only extra cost is the frame, and the frames are reusable. The bags are actually the same or a little bit less. The reason I say that is we've probably given our people more training than anyone in Dane County on how to properly install an inlet bag, and they still get installed improperly. It's just difficult to get them in right. Plus, this project might be going over the winter, and in the winter, the flaps are a problem. You can't plow snow, you can't do anything, and the flaps are plugging them up. So they have a number of different products. The light product is terrible. I wouldn't allow it. They do it because it's the same exact price as an inlet bag, but it's not a really good frame. They have one called their regular product, and that the frame is like $70, and the bags are maybe anywhere from $45 to $65, depending on what type of bag you get. So a regular bag, just the bag only, is around $65. So I mean, we're not talking a big thing, but I'm worried about, we're right next to the Har River. We're in a really high impact zone for if something gets off the site, it's a problem. And quite honestly, they're easier to clean when you pull them out. They've got two handles on them. They go under the grate, they got two handles. They take the grate out, pull it out, clean it. You don't lose the bag down the inlet. You don't lose anything down the storm sewer. I suspect everything in Dane County will come to this eventually, but it's a newer product, so it's fairly new here right now.
Yeah,
So it's one thing when you review the plans, it'd be nice if you could talk to them and talk about that. I don't know how many inlets you have, but it's not a big change.
It's not a lot.
But it secures the site a lot better for the erosion during the project.
We would probably do that even on the street side of things. I think it's
Well, when we
probably-
talk about the
yeah.
streets, we'll probably
Kind of
talk about that
specs
again,
and
but
like that.
but again, it makes a lot of sense anymore for the problems we're
That's
having with
good.
inlet bags.
So there's one other thing, as you were mentioning that, I was thinking that I don't have in here, and that is, you saw this, how they're fronting Metropolitan Lane, and when you see the new plans that we're gonna bring forward later, we're kind of encroaching on a little bit what used to be the right-of-way, and there's gonna be a request for probably an easement for parking and curb and sidewalk along there. It's gonna bump back. It shouldn't affect that footprint, and there's gonna be a little site change as part of that if everybody agrees to it. That's gonna ultimately add more parking, and we'll get into that later. So there's a little bit of a look through as part of that.
Kathy?
I'm
Any
fine.
questions? Rob?
Did I miss it? Is there any information on, well, this is just the review process. The area lighting for this site? What that's going to be?
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
It's in the very back of the packet stone you gave us. And the photometrics are on there.
It's sheet A100.
Oh yeah, I did see that. It's kind of hard to tell what this looks like, but I would want to see. Yeah. I was just thinking about the lighting for phase one. I thought had like a little sleeker lighting fixture. I don't know if it'd be possible to match that, to have some continuity with phase one and phase two going together, especially with them bookending the drive.
Are these on the pole lights, the street lighting you're talking
Yep,
about?
the area lighting, yeah.
Yeah, if we didn't do that, that seems like an obvious thing we should be doing.
They look a lot nicer than these. These look kind of clunky and.
And the pedestrian scale, the bollards too?
Well, there's no bollard lighting on phase two, I don't think, is there? Just the pole lighting.
So match the lights and poles.
Yeah.
Rod, anything else?
As far as the architecture goes, that red metal accent material, is that stamped or is that painted? It shows as kind of a brick pattern on there. Is that what it is, or is it just a?
It comes from the factory painted. It's not something that we're painting on the site, is that?
No. Is there a pattern to it, or is it solid
Yes,
red?
nope, there's a pattern to it.
Okay. And is that brick on the bottom first level?
That's actual brick.
Okay.
Actual clay brick.
As far as the site plan goes, it's just the island on the south edge of the property. Is there a reason it's just 3 stalls right there, or it's not more? It seems kind of out of place. Like, why is there 3 stalls and then?
ATC, there's a big ATC pole right there.
Okay.
And this-
Yeah.
That's where, you can't see it on this exhibit, but that's where I believe the overhead line.
Oh, I see now. Okay.
You can probably see it on the page, and it has that kind of symbol.
Okay. I think that's all the comments I have right now.
Chad?
I was just hoping to get a comment on the timing of Metropolitan Lane, because to the extent we're going to be talking about parking, I know Metropolitan Lane is one of the key parts of this. That accessory road is not being built until phase 2, correct? That connects Metropolitan to,
To bridge.
correct?
That will all be built now.
It will all be built now. Okay, so the 100 parking spaces
Yep.
we anticipate coming online with these 2 developments. Okay.
Yep, that will all be built concurrently with the rest of this construction of this first year.
All right.
Yeah, there was a conversation about, Chris brought it up, about extra fill. You can't hear my voice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You could go up to the mic, that'd be great, thank you.
You're looking above you for somebody on a boom?
Well, maybe there's like little speakers hanging out or something. You brought up the parking on the one other lot, the
Yes.
big open lot. I should just throw it out there, and I know, probably don't want to, it's going to cost more money, but we have a lot of recycled concrete out there. I don't believe we're going to use it all. So as far as, grading something out and the cost of material might be a lot less than everybody thinks if we get into just moving it from the pile over and creating a lot to some degree, if that is in fact where we're going. So there is a potential to use some existing material that's out there.
Great, thanks, Josh. Brian?
So following up on Chad's discussion of the timing of phase 1 and phase 3, or 1B, and the parking concern with the addition of the connector road, that makes me a little less concerned, particularly in the early parts of scaling up of rental and all of those other pieces, that I don't think the demand is going to be at peak demand day 1. And so the leeway between scaling up and having more parking online, I'm a little less concerned, but I'd like to hear back from Chris and Kathy regarding their concerns around that as well. Going to your question about stormwater, I would agree that 40%, I mean, I don't want to kick the can to another part of the site and to absorb it all from the city road construction aspect of it. And the idea of there's potential in this area. And I'm not sure if I read it correctly in your comments, Josh, around the snow storage. And if they took advantage of some of the easier items to help hit the 40, will we have issues then with snow storage, and where does that get moved on the site?
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to have somewhat of a plan because of the, it's just standard. I mean, you're potentially, right, this basin's gonna be likely, you know, down in this area. So I mean, in pushing snow, they're gonna have to push it to other places. You can't push the snow into the basin area. There is still room on site to push the snow, you know, just a plan. It's in your ordinance to come up with a plan. I don't know how often people really do for the sites, but they do have green area there. Just making, you know, maybe a statement or something as they respond back that it won't go into the bioretention area, because that's gonna be the main concern as part of that bioretention.
Other than that, it looked like there were a lot of other pieces just to clean up, but those are the items that jumped out at me. Thanks.
Susan?
I appreciate the architectural changes. I think they're positive. And I would also support the 40% TSS removal. It seems like that makes sense. And if you think you can find places to put the snow other than those places, I think it's worth thinking about that ahead of time. In addition to those other comments. Otherwise, I think it's great.
I have no additional comment.
Yes, Chris?
I have a bunch more. I didn't know we were doing all comments. I thought we were just doing Josh's part.
Oh, I'm sure.
Sorry, well, given that they've been jumping back and forth, so go ahead.
Okay.
Dive in.
One of them was a point that Josh had brought up, but there's no real existing grades at the bank property. You might as well come up because a lot of this is going to be engineering. I can't tell what your plan is. I see you're taking out the retaining wall at the bank. Are your grades then, I looked at your hotel grades, they look up there, so is your intention then just to match the grades at the bank?
Yes. that would
Okay,
be the intention.
so there'll be no retaining wall between them, and
there's no-
and we'll take a look at the grades to make sure there's not 3-to-1s all over the place that are hard to maintain, okay?
It'll be fairly flat.
Okay,
area.
and where you're matching up on the bank property, then you're not taking out their landscaping? Is this something we want to keep an eye on when we see final grades? It's hard with the grading plans we have right now to figure out exactly what you're doing.
Yeah,
But
we can
we want to
look
make
at-
sure if there's some landscaping there removed, it gets replaced. And then do you know what's happening with the transformer? Where it's going?
Steve? Sorry, can you go back up to the mic? Thank you.
What we would like to do with what we'd like to do with the transformer is give the bank an easement for that transformer to remain on our lot.
Okay, I figure you're going to do something like that, or perhaps have a transformer that serves both the bank and the hotel.
Yeah.
But, there's just nothing that talks about
Yeah,
it.
and I think part of the reason is we don't know exactly what the utility company is going to tell
No.
us to do,
But there'll need to be some plan for it, some
Exactly,
space
exactly,
allocated for that.
exactly.
Okay, thanks. Lighting details, I agree with Rob's comment. We need to look at the poles and fixtures and get something that integrates with the whole development, with what's going to be going out the street lighting, with what you're doing on your first apartment building. We want it to look like it was all built together. Landscaping, we haven't talked about. I think you need an upgrade on the landscaping. You're 22% green space right now. And when you are sub that 30%, we ask you to go above the bare minimum points, and you're right around the bare minimum points. So I think you've got to look at areas where you can enhance that landscaping. Some areas you might be on some of those center islands, put 2 trees, one at each end, because that'll help that canopy get over that part. And there's some things like that, and that's something you could certainly work out with staff unless people disagree. But at 22% green space, I would expect some more than meeting the minimum of the code. Sure.
You got light poles right on top of your trees.
Do
too,
we?
it looks like.
Where's the light poles, in the middle or
In
the
the
ends?
middle.
Then we put the trees on both ends of the island?
Yeah, you do an ornamental.
Yeah. Yeah.
The smaller
And there's other areas to get a few more canopy trees and things in there, but again, that's details you can work out, but certainly something above minimum with that. Inlet protection we talked about, I think it's a great idea. I'm sure the whole county will be at that soon, but you're right by the harbor. You just don't want something getting through. So I'd look at the frame. Water quality we talked about. Josh had quite a few drainage comments above and beyond the water quality, including oil and grease. I certainly support all his comments. I don't think there was anything there that was unusual. Would you agree? Yeah. Okay. Because now, I mean, if there's something that Josh has in his report that you say, this is crazy, or we shouldn't be required to do this, this is the time to ask that question.
Let him talk a little bit about the TSS.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess my concern on that is
We should wait for Josh to come back, actually.
Josh is right here.
Oh, sorry.
I guess my only concern would be as we looked at stormwater from an overall development standpoint, and TSS-wise, including the right-of-way, we're meeting 55%, or reducing it by 55%. I know that on phase 3, we're only at 16%, but that's kind of in the approved stormwater report and always has been. So I'm just unsure why we're now switching away from what the approved stormwater report indicated and going and adding a bioretention basin.
Well, we didn't have an approved stormwater report. We had just conceptual things going on. This is a standalone site. And in Dane County, every individual site is required to meet the county requirements. That's not something we even put in place, the county does, and we have to abide by that or stricter regulations. And this is an independent site, and 40% is the minimum for a redevelopment site. So to come on here and have this site, which will have different ownership, and say you can do something different, and then years to come, somebody else has a site, well, they change it because we don't need that. You can imagine the problems we get into. Plus, to my knowledge, unless you can correct me, there was never an approved stormwater report for this. There's some conceptual work done.
Yeah, there wasn't at the end, so we were given a stormwater report at the end, and so the stormwater report was for the overall GDP. Can we get 40% overall if we had to do it? Can we redevelop this entire area and achieve 40%? Not knowing what all the individual sites are, and then seeing the PIP for the hotel, I'm sorry, not the hotel, but the first stuff and making sure they had it. Now it's a new PIP, so I just posed the question, do we want to make it 40 here? Yes, can we get it 40 everywhere, Chris? We probably can, but we're going to be doing stuff on the street side.
Right, and I think to shift the burden from this site to the city to do it on the streets, when you have the ability to do it here, I think that's shifting a burden. I don't see why we would.
The only comment I have on that, Chris, though, is remember when we first started this project, a lot of the stormwater from all 3 of our sites was going to be stored underneath the park. And we've deterred from that and tried to retain most of it on our own sites.
I do remember that.
Since that time. So I'm happy to try to meet whatever, we want this, to
and I
work
think you have
too.
areas you can do it, and I also remember on the original one was all stored on the park, one of the strongest messages that came back from Plan Commission was, don't store it all under the park.
Sure,
In
and
fact, try
we've
to
worked hard.
eliminate it if you can. So that was a pretty strong message coming in the GDP process before we had this. And one of the other messages from that was try to get sites like this one. I think Josh talked about this one in particular. Instead of draining it through the park, get it out to this ditch so it doesn't come through the park.
Sure.
So, and there's ways to do it. I mean, 16 is not much, and 40 isn't that hard to hit. A lot of it you can get with inlet filters and sumps. I mean,
Which we are doing some.
yeah, and I think there's ways to do it. Yeah. And if we leave that in staff's hands, and you get to the point where you feel you're at 37.8%, and he's being unreasonable, we can talk about it. I don't think that's.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we'll work as hard as we can on it.
Okay.
I think we've come a long way from where we were, where this was all gonna go under the park, though.
That was, that was a bone of contention here, though, to show it all. We talked about not doing that.
Yeah, it was a bone of contention, but it was the plan.
No, not that it's been approved.
It was the plan in the beginning. Yeah.
Yep, okay, thanks. Architectural, we didn't talk about much. On our last one, we talked about trying to get a little more masonry on it, and some of the talk was about some vertical elements. So I was a little surprised to see the brick transition into a stamped brick metal panel.
Well,
That matches what's on phase 1.
it's,
Phase 1, you have some vertical elements of masonry.
Phase 1, we have blue metal panels that go up the side of the building, and that's exactly what is on the top.
Great, but don't you also have some vertical elements of masonry on phase 1?
There are some vertical elements of
That's what I thought, and that's what we talked about, trying to get some of that into
Yeah, and I
this.
think, you can speak to this more probably than I can, but I know Bruce has spent a lot of time with IHG, just trying to get rid of this, and that was a challenge in itself. And I know that there was discussions about brick, and I know one of the conversations was, is the whole building, they wanted some consistency. They felt like too much was going on with brick foods going up the side of the building and deterring too much from the brand, so.
Yeah. My recollection when Bruce was here is that he didn't think it'd be a problem getting some vertical elements, but I'd also like to know what the rest of the commission feels and how they like where it is. And, you know, one comment to throw out, we keep hearing the comment was no ephes in Monona. That commissioner's no longer here. And so I'm not sure how the rest of the commission even feels about that, but one thing we did want to do is to get some substantial amount of masonry on the building. So I think that's maybe a good question for everybody on the commission, how they feel.
Just as a point of information, I brought up the ephes, so.
Okay. I thought it was
don't know
Dale.
that it was-
Sorry.
I think Dale agreed with me, but I know I brought it
Okay.
up initially, so.
Okay.
And what's wrong with EFS? What's wrong with EFS?
With a bunch of ephes on the building, I think it would age. It looks cheaper,
Okay.
and I think it wouldn't age as well. I know they said that it's scheduled for updates every 7 to 9 years. I think it said in that initial thing, but that's probably more for the interior than the exterior.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the switch in materials to more lasting, even though when I first looked at it, it looked exactly the same as the first one. Now, I know in reality, the materials are going to make it look a lot better than having a bunch of ephes on it. Not that there's no place for ephes, but I do appreciate the switch out of materials because it'll last. It'll look better longer, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that was the conversation I think Bruce, really had was, in convincing IHG to approve this is, hey, we need to make this nicer. This, no, it's not,
Could you just move over towards the mic a little bit, Steve? Thank you.
I think that was the conversation Bruce had with IHG is, hey, we need to make this one a lot nicer. This isn't the middle of Iowa where we can just do a prototype Avid with a bunch of ephes on it. We need to make this nicer. And, they came back with Avid's a brand new concept for us. We can't, be doing, going too crazy on a new brand and making all of these look different. Do whatever you want, kind of to some extent with materials, but the masses and the forms and the colors have to match the prototype. And that was the message that he delivered back to Craig and I. So this has been approved by IHG. It's a process. What, a 30-day process or 60-day?
30 if they want to be nice.
30 to 60-day process just to get an architectural approval through them. And so any changes, we were happy to take them back, but, it's a 30 to 60-day process to get any changes approved by them.
Kathy?
Just a comment. Good taste is good taste. I don't care if it's in the middle of Iowa or in the middle of
Sure.
of Madison. And there's an expression that says, start out as you mean to go on.
Sure.
And if it's a new company, they should be putting their best foot forward. So I think this is we're doing them a favor by asking
Yeah.
them
Well,
to upgrade it, and they would want to have their best foot forward. So if this is used as an example for other communities, so they should thank us.
yeah.
How's
Well,
that?
look, you don't have to convince me. I mean, I have a sizable investment next door. The last thing I want is an ephes-looking building 10 years down the road that looks like it's falling apart. So, I mean, we're on the same team.
Rob, do you have anything else to weigh in there in terms of the materials or anything else?
Not the materials, lighting. I was going to ask. I was looking at the photometric plan. You have 2 light poles back on that access drive. And Josh, I don't know, when we construct that, is there going to be a lighting component for that access drive with? Yeah. And they're right up on the curb.
Mm-hmm.
Moving forward, I don't know whose property or who should be lighting that, but I would want that pole to match whatever sort of standard. I don't know, I think it's a coordination thing.
I think
Between-
there's some coordination between.
Sorry.
There's definitely a little bit of coordination that needs to be happen with both buildings. I think with lighting as they're going up, as we do street lighting, there will be and is planned to be lighting in this back connector street. It's going to be more of a parking lot style, and we'll get to that a little bit later.
Okay.
At least planned, or whatever you guys want to see there. So, you might be able to pick up some of that and only have to do maybe some on the building type type lighting on the back side.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a good comment.
I had a recommended condition 13 to just outright remove those 2 poles from the hotel plans and to be dealt with as part of the street reconstruction,
Yeah.
if that makes sense for everybody.
Chad?
I just wanted to weigh in on the issue of suspended solids because I definitely would not support going below the 40% for this individual parcel. And I want to share with the commission a comment I made at Public Works when Josh was there last week presenting the street plan. I told him, you know, the city of Monona has made a lot of commitments to be more sustainable, to be a leader. We've made these commitments in actual ordinances that we've passed and in plans that we have adopted. And so I want us to be proud of the things that we do as a city. I think minimal compliance with state standards isn't good enough. I think that, you know, we want to be able to brag about the fact that we have done a better job with the stormwater on this site. And to that end, we were talking specifically about the street. Now, and that's, you know, that's the public, the direct public side of this investment is building that street. It's part of the TIF. And so if we're going to dumb down our standards on the development site and force the street to do the lift for stormwater, then we've already handicapped ourselves. Now, obviously, this is one big development in some respects, and I think we're reasonable people, but the spaces that are being developed have to be congruent and have to meet these standards. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Since Chris requested, do you have anything to say about the masonry that the actual visual design?
You know, I did not come tonight prepared to make those sorts of comments, and I'll confess that I'm in the business of making my client happy and weighing in with professional opinions. And so, I mean, I do certainly agree with the concern about EFS, but beyond that, I hadn't really thought much about that, so I'll stay silent.
Okay. Brian?
So when I look at some of the other phases in the vertical elements, I know that was a piece that we discussed. I think this is an improvement over the original prototype that was shared. And one piece is I have a similar question. I'm not sure what the cherry tomato steel stamped panel will look like. I mean, on here, I'm not sure if it's intended to be a brick pattern that replicates the brick below, or if it's intended to be a different textured pattern. I think when I'm presenting that kind of comment is the idea of if it's intended to look like brick, I wouldn't want it to be stamped where it's going to be easily distinguished that that is not brick and it's not a continuation on the vertical element. And if it's anywhere close, I would want us to reconsider it. Because if it's the take on, this is where we were going to get the vertical element and we're just going to do the first so many feet in brick and then we're going to switch over to this other material, I would be concerned.
That wasn't, a couple things. Number one, that wasn't the intent at all. Number two, we've got an actual sample on order. It's a relatively new product, so we're patiently waiting to get an actual sample of that. And then just from a personal standpoint, our corporate rule of thumb is if you're going to try to match something, you better do it exactly or make it so different that it's obvious that you didn't try and you swung and missed. So the intent absolutely was not a cheaper way to make it look like brick. In fact, from a cost per square foot standpoint, they're pretty similar.
And with that last statement, the cost is pretty similar. Like, is that an opportunity to really get the vertical element? Although I don't know if I'd want to kind of spend it all there in the sense of if there are other ways to get a vertical element on some of the panels and breaking up the kind of whole linear aspect of the front of that building.
The cost per square foot of the steel versus brick is pretty similar.
Yeah.
And Steve has been involved in the conversations and already mentioned today the dialogue with the brand. And I fully appreciate that Monona is a standalone community and I'm in front of lots of plan commissions. In fact, I chair a plan commission back in West Bend. So I'm sitting on your side of the table a lot. There is some value, I believe, to Monona and certainly to the operations of the hotel for it to be able to be identified as an Avid brand, especially as Avid continues to grow. So if paint could hold on to brick as well as it can hold on to metal, I'd say, sure, let's just make that red column brick and we'll paint it red. Well, the fact is it just doesn't work that well, and I really don't want to be out there repainting it every spring. So that vertical red element is kind of a cornerstone of the brand, and I think it'd be dangerous to dramatically change that, not only from the operation of the hotel standpoint, but really from Monona's standpoint and being able to identify what hotel this is. Does that make sense?
We thought that would complement the phase 1 building too,
Right.
as much as we pushed on it, because it was an Eaton's Tower before.
Yeah, and it's tough without seeing it, and I know representation in here is not always easy in the sense of
Understood.
if brick is the start, and if it is more challenging for brick on the bottom and the steel stamp panel to get the cherry red in that area, I understand the idea of wanting that visual component to replicate. Is that an opportunity to then move a vertical aspect of brick all the way up in a different area? But
Brick is really desirable, especially in our type of climate around the base. Snow shovels and snow blowers, and it's very durable. Again, this metal panel is a high quality product. I believe we've got a landscape buffer. I don't want to speak completely out of school, but I believe we tried to minimize any snow removal areas as it butts right up to the panel just for that reason.
Panel doesn't go down to the ground.
I'm kind of looking at it right now.
on any side.
I'm looking at
All the
the,
way around.
Yep.
all right, good. Then we did it the right way.
Landscape that will go above it.
Right.
But
No, we did it the right way then.
Exposure to panels at the ground level.
So, I get it. I like the idea of brick myself, but I don't know that it's the be-all, end-all of materials. The cement board siding is an LP smart siding. If you guys have probably had lots of projects come in front of you with that on it, it is a relatively new, high-quality product, so it's not getting off on the cheap, that's for sure. It just isn't brick, and it's not only from a cost standpoint, but architecturally, brick looks different. So I mean, this was an intentional effort. This wasn't, we weren't sitting there punching a calculator figuring out what we could do the least expensive. This was an intentional effort for architecture.
Anything else, Brian?
Nope.
Susan?
No, I'm satisfied with the way it is. I think it is a big improvement, and I appreciate it. Kathy, I think I just saw your hand, but you want.
Don't worry, I'm gonna go back
Oh,
around.
okay.
I'm not,
I don't have anything to add. Griff?
I'm satisfied with the appearance, too. I did want to raise one question. The question was raised by one of our appearances tonight about access to the yacht club during construction and access to the boat ramp. Have you guys considered that, and what have been your plans about it?
So I think that's a question that's probably better answered by the city, because I think the question that he was asking was with regard to the road that's going in, and we're not putting that road in.
You don't anticipate there'll be any problems with respect to the movement of your equipment or anything along those lines?
Not at all, because the yacht club mainly comes in off Bridge Road, and our equipment will mainly come in off the access road like it does now.
Thank you.
Kathy?
just sort of a general comment. When I look at the building, it's an attractive building. Not one that I look at the apartment buildings that are going up, whether they're the ones on Cottage Grove Road, whether they're ones on Monona Drive. They all have multitude of colors and a multitude of straight lines. And this is very consistent with those and what we've approved in the past. So I think it's not, if I was gonna build a house, I wouldn't build a house that looked like this.
Sure.
But I think commercially, it looks fine, and it looks better than it did before. And if you guys are happy, and the hotel owner is happy, I'm happy.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Yes?
Yes.
Chris?
A couple more. There was a comment in Strand's review where one area looked like concrete in front of the dumpster and one area looked like blacktop. I highly recommend you put concrete for a pad where the front tires of that truck are going to be. The plan we have at least on the landscape plan, it looks like asphalt, but that, you're just gonna.
That's not any question.
Okay, thank you. And we don't talk at all about rooftop mechanicals and the screening. What's happening on there?
On the roof framing plan, which is second, third last page, somewhere around there, it shows the likely locations of the rooftop units and identifies screening around them as well.
And what's the screening material? And what's the height? And what's the visibility?
Some, I don't know. I'll check, wait, I'm in reverse order. Let me check it out. Not exactly sure,
Okay.
and I'll figure it out and get it to you.
We don't want to see it.
Well, if we do see it, it needs
You
to
want to
be
be-
compatible with
yes.
architecture of the building.
But the mechanicals, we don't want to see.
No, we don't want to see the.
Nope,
mechanicals,
you
but
won't.
the
There'll be
screening
screening.
Material has to be compatible with.
Yep, very easy for us to identify.
Okay, and then my last one, and I don't want your blood pressure to go way up again, but we didn't settle the parking, and here's where I'm going with that, is we had a plan for phase one that if it was needed, we were going to have some area available in phase three for parking. And then some point along the way, you decided that you're just going to put it in to be safe. Now, what I'm talking about for phase two is to be able to have a condition here, we can monitor that parking. If it becomes an issue, you can put some temporary parking in the phase two area. And
If it becomes an issue?
Yeah, not, if you remember our original one for phase one, we weren't requiring it off the bat. We said, this may be something we need to do, and you came along and said, you know, I'm gonna put it in right now to be safe. And so what I'm looking at is the ability to have some mechanism that when this is a big deal, and it's a problem for you too, let's face it, we don't want you to fail, and you don't want you to fail. But to be true to what, we have to look at parking, that's one of our charges, and to be true to that, I mean, I think we have to have a mechanism there that if this becomes an issue, and we're having a parking problem before those phase two apartments go in, that we can get the temporary lot over there. All we're doing is replacing the parcel where phase three is with the parcel where phase two is for what the original thought was.
Yeah, so how would that look?
It would be a condition that if it gets back to planning commission and Sonia will get the complaints, the alders look around, we drive around. If there becomes a real parking issue there, then we have the ability to ask you to come back in and look at that parking and put a temporary lot in on phase two area.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to have a parking issue. I don't even think I will. I think, you know, part of it for me is just, you know, I can get on board, I truly, like, you know, the right thing to do, I can get on board with like the 40% TSS requirement, like that makes sense. The additional landscaping, I think that makes sense. What I struggle with is, you know, you're applying codes to a mixed-use project as if it was a standalone project. You know, if this was all apartments and I was short, I could understand, but you're not applying any credit to the project for mixing the different uses together. And Monona's never gonna be able to move forward with mixed-use projects on any other site if you look at standalone codes on a mixed-use project. It just, they'll never work. So I don't have a problem, you know, saying, hey, listen, if we do have a parking issue in the future, for sure I'll wanna, you know, the last thing I would want is for these projects to fail. So for sure we'll come in and add them. But, you know, just keep in mind, there's a lot of different moving parts with this entire project, with the park going in. You know, what happens if there's marathons at the park and all of a sudden all of our parking lot's full, and you drive by one day and you notice they're all full, and you say, hey, Sonia, Steve's lot's full, I'd like him to come back to planning commission and put, you know, that parking lot in phase two.
Okay, as an answer, I think you're giving us very little credit.
No.
We have gone way beyond our parking and our zoning ordinance. We're giving you credit for 100 stalls in the street that aren't yours. They're public parking that the yacht club and anyone else can use. We're giving you credit for stalls, and we're trying to build more stalls on Bridge Road. Josh has redone a plan to get the street parking from 50 to 100. The city is bending over backwards to try to address this parking issue. I think backwards to try to do it.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that if we have one and that land's available, we need to look at a temporary solution.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and I'm not trying to say you're not, you know.
We've taken away all our zoning ordinance wouldn't even come close to the parking that you're doing here. Not even close.
Yeah, no, I understand. You know, we've thought a lot about the parking.
I know you have.
And really, you know, we're almost less worried about it now. I was on the same camp as you, a little worried about phase one when it was on its own. That's why we said, okay, let's get that lot built. But with the cross parking agreement with the bank, I think we're even in a much better position now than we, with the hotel than we were with just phase one. Because we now truly have a use that is not utilizing those parking stalls at a time when our phase one and phase three parcels are at highest demand.
Agreed.
So, but by all means, if it's an issue, we're not gonna compromise our project by not building a parking lot. But we wouldn't wanna just put it in the beginning. We'd rather put that money towards additional landscaping or put solar in, our phase one building or something like that than have it just go to waste.
We don't want to waste your money.
Sure. No, and I'm not trying to not take credit away. I know you guys have given us a lot of credit for parking here, so
We have.
I hope you didn't take that the wrong way.
Not to mention building a lot for development, but
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
very vested in this development.
Yeah. We both are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Josh, could you speak to the boat ramp and the issue that was brought up at the beginning of the meeting?
We have an agenda item
It is,
that
sorry.
hit that.
Specifically.
Last one.
I will discuss that.
Oh, sorry, we're moving right to that. I'm taking that out of order, so we're moving right to
Oh,
that,
yeah.
sorry.
I can discuss it.
Okay, great. Apologize. All right, so, that being the case, I'd like to move to approve on item D with any kind of amendments, yes?
Move approval with conditions 1 through 13 as written by staff. Condition 14, the landscape condition, reworded so that the standalone landscaping plan that not meets or just substantially exceeds the minimum height standards in the Phase 3 PIP, approval by staff. Condition 15 is written. Condition 16, that a revised plans per the Strand recommendations be submitted to them for review and approval. And condition 17, that a revised lighting plan showing poles and fixtures coordinated with the development, and that's approved by staff. And condition 18, that if the parking is deemed to become a major issue in the future, the plan commission can request the developer to come in to take a look at temporary parking on phase 2 property.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Now, I would like to move item E, on page 2, review and discussion of the riverfront streetscape design. Take that out of order and take it next. It just seems to make sense to me that should go next. So, that being said, item E under new business, review and discussion of riverfront streetscape design presented by Strand Associates. Josh.
They are probably changing it. You're good.
Okay, so what I'd like to do tonight is talk about the public infrastructure for the riverfront development. And I have a variety of slides that I'd like to just go through for maybe 10, 15 minutes, kind of run through all the material, kind of the thought process that's going behind it. And then I have we'll come back to these topics and we'll kind of discuss them and address them. But let me get the whole kind of message and thought theme out there a little bit. And this is something similar that we did when we went to Public Works and kind of had the same discussion with them. So the proposed redevelopment site, as was kind of proposed and approved at the GDP level. Two things to note on this plan when you look at it is, one, the multi-use path is on the west side of the road, or the left side of the road when you look at that, from the north to the south along Metropolitan Lane. And parking overall, there's around 50 stalls that are on the street. Now that's the street, the Metropolitan Lane that goes north and south, and it's also the connector road that we're calling the connector road that goes east and west. We have since kind of changed that a little bit. Oops, I'm jumping on here. A little bit to accommodate some new parking, and we're going to get into that. But first I want to talk about the overall project components to give you an idea of what we're all doing. 1,250 linear feet of roadway reconstruction overall. We're going from that 50 parking stalls that you're going to see in some of these next exhibits to up to a little over 100. And that's going to be give or take a few as we discuss this tonight, I'm sure. But what we were able to do is kind of double what was out there, and we'll talk about that. 1,500 linear feet of stormwater improvements, we can talk a little bit about that. Really minor sanitary improvements because we've already rerouted the MMSD line, and a lot of these buildings are tying directly into that. This is only improvements that are next to the breakwater and the yacht club to make sure that we pick them up. There'll be a bunch of streetscaping stuff that we will discuss tonight, lighting improvements that we'll discuss tonight, and then site furnishings. I want to just kind of cover the broad topic of all of those. So the big thing is schedule here, and I want to talk about that first. We're on the second bullet there now today, and after this, I don't have it on there, but next week we'll be meeting with staff to talk about what Public Works had to say about this and what the Plan Commission has to say about this. Because as we move forward, we need final design right around the end of June. We need to bid this in July and start constructing this, as you can see, as early as mid-August. And the reason for that is we got buildings going on. They want to connect to some of these utilities, not only the public infrastructure utilities, but also private that's going to be routed up through these streets. So what will happen this fall is likely a lot of the underground work will happen, street base may take place, and some of this is going to then happen the following spring as far as pavement going down and so forth. That is the plan right now. Unless we have a great fall, the contractor has a lot of time, they may continue to put things in, but we'll see how that goes. So the project overview, and you have sheets like this, and it's oriented a little bit different. As you can see, to the right of your screen would be Broadway, the connection to Broadway, and to the left and kind of the lower part would be the Bridge Road connection. So what we did as part of this is we did angled parking along Metropolitan Lane, and we were able to get about 50 stalls out there doing that, and we did perpendicular parking along the connector road. So the connector road before had angle parking, and it was more of kind of a traditional roadway. We've changed that into basically a parking lot. So the entrance on either side would have your traditional aprons, and the sidewalk would carry all the way through them. You wouldn't have, handicap ramps and stuff like that. It'd be like a commercial drive that you go into on Monona Drive. So it would feel like you're kind of going up into kind of a parking area. Now, the intent is still there that you could cut through there. There's 24 feet of width, and you could make that connection to Bridge Road if you wanted. But we turned it into more of a traditional parking area just so that we could get the spaces and we could turn things to 90 degrees. So we almost fit, I believe we fit right around 50 stalls there, 55 stalls in that lot total of the 101 in doing that. Now, on that thing, there's two things I should point out. On the far, which would be the right side of the page, on the lower parking there, along the hotel site, you see that angled parking along Metropolitan on the hotel site. Part of that parking, a small portion of it, and that sidewalk are over the right-of-way. You can see where the sidewalk jogs out there to accommodate the parking. So we're going to need easement there for parking and sidewalk in order to get this to work. And then also on Building B, on the other side, across from the yacht club, along there's a 10-foot strip that we're going to need too. Now again, neither of these really change the intent of what the buildings were going to look like. It just encroaches into their space a little bit in order to get the additional parking spaces. The other alternative, as all of you know, was considering potential underground parking at Site C, which is becoming very expensive. So this route was kind of, this is the route we went in order to try to pick up the other ones. And then the path is part of this. The path is on the opposite side of the street. And as we started to lay this out, we started to talk to City of Madison, why cross them on Bridge Road and then cross them back at the park or cross them back maybe for the restaurants? It's felt more natural to keep that path on the park side. And to do that, we had to talk and kind of convince everybody that that was the right place to do it. But also we had to think about the yacht club. And I think we should talk about that right now. So you'll see the yacht club entrance there. And I'm going to go over here and just point it out to everybody that's sitting there. So we have 1 and 2 access points. I'm going to go back so they can hear me, but those are the 2 access points I'm going to talk about. And why is there 2, versus 1? Now you can imagine today all that is open. But at the same time, if we put the path there, we want to make sure we protect the path to some degree. We don't want it to be just pull in and pull out, but we're also trying to do some organization there in working with the yacht club. The entrance further to the south, so to the right side of the screen, that access, that's a larger entrance that will actually allow them to launch their boats into the water and also circulate up into their parking. It's a little bit slightly angled next to their building, and then they can come out the other one. Why is the other one there? Because they actually have doors that go into their building where people can load boats into their building. They can take them off, put them inside storage. So both access points are really needed. And at the same time, though, it's not a full open access, so we can try to restrict where people are coming and going. I agree with the yacht club, signage is gonna be needed, and just even people that are using the facility is gonna have to know, hey, there's gonna be bikes that, are crossing here, and everybody's gonna have to kind of get used to it. But that's kind of what we talked about, and I think that kind of fulfills the need of the yacht club as per the Public Works meeting, but, there's can still be some refinements that have to take place there. So moving along, this is just it on the aerial, and you have these handouts too, just to kind of give you an orientation of space and how it all lays out. And then we go into potential materials. How is this going to look? And what kind of materials are we going to use? Now the colors are not meant to say, hey, we're going to have pink and we're going to have orange out there. There's just some different features there. The first thing I want to point out is asphalt. We were thinking that parking lot, that connector road, I'm calling it a parking lot, but we could still name it as a road, would just be your standard asphalt. And Metropolitan Lane, north-south, would be concrete in gray there. It kind of is an urban street. It feels like it would be a nice concrete street. It's close, the buildings are close. It kind of has that urban streetscape feel to it. When you look past that yellow spot in the middle, we have a park, a public park, that has, as you come up to it, has kind of a gather space at the entrance. That I can see, maybe a colored concrete, different tabletop. So basically, as you're riding down this road, the curb fades away, everything's level, so you can walk right from the park across to Building C without really having to go down or up a ramp. The road kind of comes up to you at that point, between the two crosswalks that you can see there in red. Again, these are just big ideas. We'll talk about them in a second. So then, landscaping would be in green, maybe opportunities where you could put green space, trees, maybe some landscaping. We'll talk about stormwater in a second. The hardscape in pink are a little bit more narrow areas. Some of it you'll see behind the parking, the angled parking. It's really only like 3 feet. Do we want to put some hardscape in there, or do we want it all to be grass? What do we want to do? Think about that as we're moving forward. And then the crosswalks in red. So here's just a thought. Here's what it could basically look like. And this is just a big idea right now. But the entrance that you're seeing on the right would be Broadway. And then you come in, the parking maybe is a different color of concrete or a paver we'll talk about. Potentially some colored concrete behind the curb, the sidewalk, grass areas, trees, lights, the feel of what maybe this looks like in concrete. So let's just talk about cost real quick, because everybody, they see this and they go, oh my gosh, it's going to be very expensive, right? We're worried about cost. We should be. Overall, the street itself is around $1 million. The storm sewers, $250. Water mains, $285. Sanitary is not real expensive because we've already put in the MMSD line, and that was expensive. Miscellaneous site furniture, landscaping, and lighting you'll see there for right around $2.4 million. Budgeted, I think we're right around $2.5, Sonia, for this. So this is kind of, when I go through some of these options, this is kind of thinking a little bit on the higher end of all these finishes. We can work that number down if we want to work that number down. I think there is room to do that. It just depends on what kind of finishes and how we want the street to look. So let's just go through some simple streetscape ideas that we can talk about. So we have Monona Drive, right? It's a very nice street, but it is pretty simple. You have the grass terrace. You have kind of landscaped areas that are more natural. You have a little bit of red in the crosswalks and along the medians in different areas. But it isn't really over the top. It's nice, but it still has functionality to it. And it's really mainly to sit there and move a bunch of traffic, right? What are we going to do behind the terrace? Are we going to leave it grass? Are we going to do maybe a stamped pattern to some degree? Are we going to do a brick? Here's a brick example where they actually put brick pavers back there and even dress it up a little bit more. That's something to consider and think about. This is Oak Creek. I'll turn to this example a few times because as we were meeting with staff, I think, Sonia, you brought this example forward. They redid a town square similar to this, where they took and they created a town square, kind of a similar environment. So you'll see more pictures of that later. What are we going to do for pavement? Concrete, we're thinking that the parking areas could be porous to a degree. They could be porous concrete, they could be porous asphalt, they could be porous pavers. All have pros and cons. I think the design team's leaning more towards the porous paver side of things. I think it's a better product. I think it holds up a little bit better. You can, take stuff up if you want. Sometimes you're locked in with the concrete and the asphalt once you put it in. It looks better, potentially, than the other ones. And we can talk about the differences. And I know Chris knows a lot about these types of surfaces too, so he'll have good insight. Stormwater-wise, if we implement some of this stuff, we can get to 50 plus TSS removal. Chad, you mentioned that in Public Works. I think there's ways that we can go above the 40% if we want to. Or we can take in the development side, if they can't, to pull stuff back, and maybe there's a cost share somehow. So there's an opportunity to go above and beyond. Porous pavers would be one of those opportunities. Here's just, what could that look like? A little more natural than maybe these darker colors. And that's kind of like more of a brown and kind of tans. And I think it looks pretty good. County Materials, local Wisconsin company, right? Good product. That's just an option that might match in with the park. I'm showing a lot of natural stuff because I feel like that's going to match with the park, and you'll see the park later. You can they even have pavers, so you don't have to mark the stalls, right? So you could actually just pave this, have the bricks right into the stalls. Again, a dressier look if you want it to be like that. Here's where the handicap spots, and this is Unilock, more local too. You can see the handicap has its own paver for handicap, and it has the cross hatching is just a different color. So again, without putting paint on the ground, you can kind of make it a little bit dressier this way. Or you can paint it. They paint them just like this too, and maintain it like you would any other surface. That is an option. Here's a look again in Oak Creek where they did that. So the two sides, you have the concrete roadway, very similar look to what you could do, and the two sides are a paver look with a brick in the terrace. And also notice the lighting. We'll talk about lighting later. This is a little bit more pedestrian scale, kind of downtown feels, kind of scale of light versus in a larger light with like the fish hook that you'd see on Monona Drive. Decorative crosswalks, we have simple red that we could do. You have the brick on Monona Drive that you could do. You have actual bricks, the stamped on Monona Drive that you could do, or you could put actual bricks in the roadway, to match maybe some of the parking that you're doing. These wouldn't be pervious. If you didn't want them to be, they could just be straight bricks. So lighting, I talked about lighting. And what are we going to do with lighting? Should the lighting mimic the park or the development side? The Creed style edge is the PED scale on the development side, and I think they have other Creed fixtures for understanding what their contractors are bringing forward. The other stuff, you see all the stuff on the left side, the stainless steel kind of looking stuff and the brush stuff, is sort of what's going on in the park right now. Now, none of those decisions have been made, but they're kind of leaning a little bit more towards kind of a wood feel with this kind of look. So do we want to mimic that in a case? Do we want to take the style that's more of the shepherd hook and maybe do that in a different material color, like a metallic color versus black? So you still kind of get the look of your lights, but they match more of the feel of the other stuff. That's an option. So one thing with lighting, and this is just Public Works talking, is they have Sun Valley lights and they have Sternberg lights. They'd like to not have another manufacturer. If they could help it, and not another person to call. So could we find something in these two lighting catalogs was one of their requests at that meeting. And that was just a request that they had. Parking lot, we talked a little bit about what is that asphalt parking lot going to be. It could be as simple as what we did up at the city hall, that parking area. It could be separate from that street. And you have to envision the street overall. I keep going back and forth. Monona Drive has its look and Broadway has its look. Bridge and Winnequa could all kind of look like city streets. Do you want this street to look different, or do you want it to look like any other city street? That's what you guys have to determine, I think, as part of this. Landscape options, again, pretty simple and natural looking. Here's kind of a step up what we did in Middleton, where you kind of have the brick terraces, kind of more mulched beds. It looks a little bit different versus just grass. And then you can go, we've done some cool stuff in Lexington, down in Kentucky, where you could really go a lot of hardscape, and I don't know if that's quite the environment here, but you have buildings and more of a downtown feel. What I want to point out here, and what I think would be cool if we want to consider it, is these planters. You see these planters that are actually inset in, and I have two pictures of them. One is really close up, and they have a little curb head there, but they also drop down, so they're kind of like a well for water to collect. On that larger picture, you can see in the street, there's those orange kind of castings. Those castings are just rusted. You could do whatever there, but that picks up the street water and goes in. And then on the back side, at the sidewalk, there's also cuts to bring the water in. So you can control water this way. And this is just above and beyond that TSS removal. And maybe a couple showcase pieces that you'd like to do in this area at the city. Just a thought. Here's Oak Creek again. You can see there's that tabletop that comes up at Oak Creek where the curb goes away and the crosswalks come across, maybe in the middle. But then also landscaping here, just either the beds raised or right flush, or we could go to that inset style where we drop them down and try to get storm water in. some thoughts again. Here's Monona Drive, the site furniture, the natural look. You know, are we trying to do something similar to this? It's to be determined here tonight, and just more of kind of an overall urban style. I don't think there's, I mean, that's pretty urban there that we did in Lexington. So here's the park, just to get a frame of reference. The park is doing more of this wood kind of concept thought right now. The poles, more kind of flagpole, kind of more nautical theme, I would say, at the park along the river than maybe your traditional theme that you would see maybe along Monona Drive or somewhere else. And then there's the park plan. So when I talk about this tabletop, and I'm going to step away for 1 second, it's you know, here's these two walkways that come across. You know, it's in this section where you would flow into the park and then across to likely what is going to take place over here is another gallery space from at least initial talks in the GDP. So to kind of link all that together as kind of a place to meet. And that's really all I have. I just kind of wanted to throw all the ideas out there, and I'd like to step back through some of these and get some opinions. Chris, you're laughing. Do you have a lot of opinions, or?
No, I do.
So, and forgive me, I kind of think we should start with parking, right? I mean, at the start here, are we missing something? Does something else need to be done? Are some of these parking stalls too close to some of the other roads, you know, as you come into this? Are we going to accept that, you know, we are parking right up to where we enter at Broadway and where we enter at Bridge? It seems like it all fits within kind of your standards, but things are very compact and pretty tight in this corridor.
Just as a point of information, and I think Rob will concur with this, the reference to the park, since since I chair that committee, and Chris, you can jump in here too, we're all on that committee. We have not dove into any kind of details in terms of lighting and all of that.
We have not. This is just initial concept. Right. Now remember though, Nancy, all this has to take place pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So in a month and a half, we have to decide on this road, and at the same time, I hope, park-wise, we can start to grasp some of that and make a decision. But you're right.
I just didn't want to mislead this plan commission that we've somehow made some determinations in that regard, because we really haven't.
No, we have not. That is a very good point. We just really have park layout kind of pinned down a little bit on what we want to see in the park.
Feedback?
Sure. Should I start?
Yeah, sure.
First, whoever decided that this should come to Plan Commission, thank you very much. This is such a critical area, and for us to be able to weigh in on streetscape, I think, is important on a project like this. So however that worked out, this is great to be able to have an input on it. Where are we starting at everything, or just parking?
Well,
the parking, number one, it's great to get all this extra parking. This site desperately needed it, and that we can do this. I love the fact we have parking. We're all worried about parking for that park. Not just the development, but also the park. We want this to be a place where people want to come. And as much as we think everybody's going to walk and ride their bikes, they're not. A lot of people are going to drive. So I think to have this additional parking is awesome. I think this is a great place to showcase permeable pavements. If we're looking at water qualities, I've seen a lot of things come through where we're putting permeable pavement through the middle of a park. It doesn't do much good. You've got acres of pervious surface to put a little sidewalk in the middle. It doesn't make any difference really to how the water's going to infiltrate there. This right here makes a difference. And we could even go a step further. There are a lot of projects that have been built with the permeable pavement, and then of course you have to have the aggregate storage layer below where that water's been collected and introduced into landscape areas. And you could have a really cool thing where you're reusing this water and it's not just infiltrating but also going to the landscape. And I've seen a couple of projects been part of some of the design where it's been really cool, and that's really evolving. As far as the permeable pavers, most of your pictures were not a traffic paver.
No, they weren't.
And I would highly, 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 highly recommend we use traffic pavers. I was part of a man swap tour last year where we demonstrated different types of permeable pavement. Yep. And one of the things we did is I took them to where we had the highway traffic paver versus the regular paver that were in your pictures. They don't last, and they rut, and they're a mess, and they're a lot of maintenance.
That's a good
So
question.
some of the ability to change colors and put stripes in aren't there, because with a traffic paver is usually L and it locks.
it locks.
And what it does is it helps the paver from not deflecting or deforming from all the traffic. And we really, if we're gonna look at permeable pavers, we need to do that. Permeable asphalt and concrete are cheaper. Permeable pavers give us a streetscape that I think we want a really neat place down here. And another generalized comment would be, this is the first time I've seen the budget numbers. If we're budgeting $2.5 million on this project, plus what we spent on the Medicine Met relocation, plus what we've been spending everywhere else, I would hope we don't scrimp by $100,000 to $200,000 and not make this area spectacular. Do some really incredible streetscaping, some innovative sustainability items as far as the water, what we can do there. I mean, really make this area a place like we all talk, in Parks Committee too, that we want people to come here. And so with investment that we have, that the developer has, I hope we really make this just an incredible area. So having said that, when you ask about terraces, where we have the permeable pavement, of course, we want to minimize our run-on, right? We talked about that at times. The technical standard allows you up to 5 to 1. That would be horrible. 3 to 1 and down is considered normal. If we can get it down to 1.5 to 1, and then the reason where I'm going with the terraces, if we can minimize the landscape material that can flow into that permeable pavement, that really extends the life. Okay, because the leaves, the grass clippings, all the stuff that comes with landscaping, as neat as landscaping is, it plugs permeable pavement. Another thing we have to make sure before we go too far is Public Works is aware that it needs to be cleaned twice a year. And not just a regular street sweeper, but a vacuum sweeper. I don't know if we have one in inventory or not. Do we?
I think we have the equipment now that can do exactly this.
Vacuum sweeping, great. Because that's what it needs. Because
Yeah.
a street sweeper just shoves it down into the... Now, I talked about the permeable asphalt and concrete are cheaper. They are. They don't look as nice, and they're a lot harder to get the infiltration rates back up on. With the pavers, they have a smaller area, and it's stone chips in the grooves that really do the filtering. But the neat part is you can. I'm also part of the test plot that we're doing. There was just a paper written by USGS on it. But what you'll see if you look at that paper is that you can reinvigorate the permeable pavers really easily, because all you've got to do is go through with a vacuum. You can vacuum up that top ½ inch to inch of stone in those permeable pavers. Almost all the dirt's in there, and you can just restone it, and you're right back to go. It's that easy to redo that. And if we keep our run-on ratios low, try to minimize the landscaping areas that go into there, it's not that much maintenance. I know Public Works will say, well, it's maintenance. It is. It's maintenance, but for what you're getting and for the water quality you can get. Because it's got to keep in mind, when I'm sitting on Steve's side of the table is, yeah, we've got to have water quality. We've got 40%, we got all this. Cities never do anything on the streets. Well, that's different. We're not going to do anything there. So I mean, I'm glad we're looking at that what we can do on streets also. One thing that I think helped on Monona Drive, your pictures made it look pretty bare, but if you had a street level picture and looked at it, one thing we really done on Monona Drive, we really intensified the tree plantings, and that makes it feel differently. So I would say that that's something we should look at strongly. Is the typical planting distance might be 30, 40 feet. We might be 20. We might be 15 on some. When you look at it, when you drive down Monona Drive and look at it and feel it, look at those trees, that's part of what does it. As far as the light fixtures, I think we need to work with the developer on what they're going to use, what we're going to do in the park. This doesn't necessarily have to be Monona Drive. This will be something unto itself probably, especially if we look at the permeable pavers and some cool things with those. As far as crosswalks, I'm a big fan of the initial phase on Monona Drive where we actually had texture in the crosswalks too. I think it just added a charm and a character to Monona Drive. And if you look at our later phases where it's just the banding with the regular colored concrete, to me regular colored concrete just fades for a while and looks chalky, and it doesn't look like, it's not as sharp. Now, in this area, if we're using permeable pavers elsewhere, we certainly could use traffic duty pavers in the crosswalks too, if we're going to look at that. We're going to spend a little more money. But again, I go to this project, this is going to be, I mean, something that it's a showcase for Monona and for the developer. So those are general comments. You know, I think I should let somebody else talk. I have a lot more.
Okay. I'm going to actually Griff, I'm gonna start down here with you since it's.
I agree that I'm very pleased that you've been able to get the additional parking. I think the area needs it, and I like the way that it's set out in the rough plan. I also agree that I would like the parking places to be distinguished, and the permeable pavers seem like a good methodology to do it. I would also carry over treating the crosswalks differently as we did in certain areas of Monona Drive. I agree with Chris's observation generally. This does not have to be, in my mind, just a regular streetscape or to mimic or echo the treatment that we've given on Broadway or on I think we can do some special things in here, and I think that this is the kind of a development that merits some additional costs, some additional care in doing that. That's my general comment.
Yeah, I agree with everything Chris just said. I really like the look of the pavers, and I would also do that with the crosswalks. And I don't know if it would, well, it's not clear how the bike path that comes down, if you are gonna have some cross traffic over that, if it would make sense to have that also distinguished.
You're saying.
Wasn't totally clear where the boat, our boat's pulling right there.
Right here, so this
Yeah,
is the
right
boat,
there.
right there's
Right,
one.
right.
And then, so you see it up there, that's
Right.
so they can launch out this way, you know,
Right.
and get into their parking this way.
So I don't know if it
This
would
would be
make-
more of an exit on this side, so they probably circulate through this
Okay.
more than anything.
So I didn't know if it would make sense to even consider pavers for that part of the
Of
bike
the
path as well.
path,
I mean, just to make it show up
just to
more.
kind of make
Yeah.
it jump a little bit.
I
So
really
like, so
I
like
like
right
that.
in here, right in here, and then
Right,
like right over in
yeah.
here,
Yeah.
as you're crossing it.
Right.
We didn't talk about the path material, but I just anticipated that as being concrete too, as you can see here. And,
Mhm.
you know, it could be asphalt, but I think concrete would look a little bit better down here.
Yes, yeah.
Cleaner finish. Or we can put that in a different material altogether. But rideability wise, it's nice to not be, you know, too bumpy, pavers and stuff,
Right.
that feel a little different on
Right, they would.
versus a nice clean
I just figured
piece
for
of
sure,
asphalt.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, asphalt feels the best, but I don't think it's gonna look the best in this
Right.
scenario for a biker.
Anything else?
No, I liked the looks of those planters too, and I don't know where you put those, but, you know, if they really fit there, it's a narrower space.
So there's low
Right.
area here,
Yeah.
there's low area here,
Right.
and so this is kind of a high point, and everything drains back to the road here, and it comes down,
Right.
so maybe in here, as it's coming down the road, and maybe over in here where we have larger areas, we could drain something to those and have what I think is more of kind of a showcase piece and also get
Right.
some TSS. Down here, this is kind of high again, so again, we're not gonna really get it in those areas, but down, there's a couple decent sized areas where I think you could fit
Yeah,
in,
something like that, yeah.
fit in a very good looking urban kind of, you know, bio basin to effect, tree well, whatever we want to put in there. If you guys are open to that.
Brian?
So following the outline that was here, I like the bike lane on the side that you have it on here. The two entries to the yacht club and the signage makes sense. I like the consideration of some type of distinguishing factor for where the bike lane crosses. And there is some level of concern about the number of people that may be using that bike area, the traffic going through there. So signage and distinguishing, I think, would be helpful. The tabletop of the roadway by the park, I like that idea with the crosswalks going across and the other color or other treatment, such as the permeable pavers that was brought up. Agree with the parking distinguished with permeable pavers. The idea around the lower level lighting, more of a pedestrian feel of the lighting. And I agree that to break away from Broadway and Monona Drive from the lighting standard and really look at coordinating with the park and development. Although I know when we get close to the Broadway side, so when I think back phase 1, building, there was a lot of connections of how do we help kind of maintain that kind of feel on that corridor, but almost look at the street as a separate kind of distinguishing piece rather than the connection to Broadway to make it kind of pop out by itself. The idea of most of our benches and other types of items along streets, we typically go with block wrought iron, and it'd be nice if we mimic and consider using the same theme. If the park is going more of a nautical-based theme, that we kind of match that and pull that into this short level of street. Even if the vast majority, I would suspect, is going to be concentrated closer to that park area,
Yeah.
and not so much on the flared ends.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be easier to pull the park into the street idea.
So speaking to that, Sonia and I talked about that today, you know, trash, bike racks, benches, I mean, we didn't really see them being here or here because the people are gonna go into these places and they're all on site right there. You probably only really need it at your gather space, and there's gonna be quite a bit of bikes and the bike harbor here already, and there's gonna be quite a bit of seating, but you're right, we probably are gonna have to spill that over out into kind of the central area. But other than that, we really wouldn't have to put a lot of site furniture, unless you guys feel strongly for it. You know, it's not a real long street. It's not like you can't walk from one side to the other likely you're gonna have to rest. I mean, most people are gonna head to that park or head to one of the buildings to some degree, and it's gonna be provided there.
Yeah. Around landscaping, I think the more that we look at the high density, particularly so that the flared ends of it, if we're spending less concentration on some of the furniture, like to really overdo landscaping components in those areas. Those are all the comments I have. Looks good.
Chad?
Well, so I am really excited about the raised tabletop at the park for a comfortable pedestrian thoroughfare across that, and of course it has an element of speed control for the automobile traffic. I think it's a feature we're going to try to incorporate more of around the city of Monona, I hope, with you know, raised crosswalks, if you will, to accomplish two goals in one. And so I'm really excited about that, and I would say I'm almost so excited about it. You know, I'm willing to I'm going to plant my flag on that hill, and I'm willing to die there, because like I just think that if that element of this went away, I know we'll regret it. You know, for those that don't know, Monroe Street is going to have raised intersections when it gets rebuilt here this year. So, you know, and you see it everywhere. I see it all over out on the East Coast, and it just creates a scale that is welcoming to pedestrians and people of all modes of transit. So that's really critical. The depressed planting areas that you show for retention and filtration, I'm really excited about that. I think that if we had one or two of them, that probably is sufficient. I think Chris's comments about not wanting to have too much vegetation, and I think, frankly, you know, if we can put in areas that are just designed to soak up the water and not have grass. I mean, we have a park for grass, and we'll have some grassy features as part of the development. But this streetscape can be entirely dedicated to plantings that are soaking up the water we collect. And I think that's the way to go. Nothing else really that's unique. I agree pretty much with all the comments that have been made. The permeable pavers for the parking, I think that'll be really classy. And Brad Brune in Public Works said that the vacuum sweeper that we've just acquired is the tool that you use to clean those pavers. So I'm trusting he's correct on that, but I don't know. I can check with Dan Stefani to confirm that we have that equipment. But Brad seems to think we are ready to go. So I say let's put it to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be fair, coming out of the Public Works Committee, right, Chad, it was kind of, they were up in the air about, they liked and maybe I mentioned this already, they liked the style of to have something different there in the paver, but they were a little unsure about maintaining pervious, right?
Correct,
They were
yeah.
almost saying, well, we'll take just standard pavers.
Yep.
But I think we should push the subject a little bit.
Well, though they also said they wanted to know what Chris had to say about it because they knew he had a lot of experience with it, so.
They wanted to do the opposite.
They seem to respect your opinion. I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but.
The Public Works Committee, when we met first, we had the same
So it
meeting.
was the committee, not staff?
Well, staff was there, and I don't think they were against it one way or the other, but they had concerns too. I mean, it's maintenance for them.
Yeah, I mean, we had the broad concern, and I made this comment that, you know, we want to put in something that, one, is going to work.
Yep.
That is not going to almost immediately get gunked up and really, we're no longer doing what we designed this to do. And if we don't have the staff or equipment to maintain it, then let's not put it in. But if in fact we have that vacuum equipment and it can work well, I think that we should do it.
It's kind of like what Chris said, it's going to be a sensitive area in the fact of sediment though, right? Because it's going to collect the sediment. We want it to do that. Collect the sediment and trap it, and it gets clogged up. So as far as when they go and salt and sand roads, they can't really put sand on this road. You know, when the construction of building B happens, we're going to have to be darn sure that we don't have overflow from building B during construction get out into our roads because it's going to mud up the pavers, right? So there's this little bit of concern, I think, on the public works side is, hey, we got to put our eyes on this, which is good.
And,
In a
well,
way.
and actually, I'm glad you just mentioned that because we did talk about the possibility of putting in a temporary
Yes.
surface on this road precisely for that reason, that if we're going to have permeable pavement, we really shouldn't install that until the third building is constructed.
So it was close to that, Chad, and I might have misled, if that's how you interpreted it at Public Works, it's a little bit different than that. So I would suggest we put in the pervious pavers now. What we were gonna leave out is this tabletop. And the only reason for that is if we build this next spring, the following summer, they're gonna be working on this public park. So we were thinking, at least.
Oh, right, you're right.
At least in the interim, as we build this whole thing, and then where this tabletop's gonna go, we would temporary asphalt that. Now, it's not gonna look the best right away, but it would give the contractor the ability to store equipment and materials here, work across this, build out this entire park, and then build this, as they come across, finish up and build this tabletop. So it's all one continuous piece as it flows into the park. So it was kind of a temporary situation, so they wouldn't have to track across all that to build that park basically a year later.
Yeah,
That
you're
was-
right.
yeah.
That is the point you made.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I
But
was.
we could do either, yeah, I mean, there's another point beside that too with the pervious pavers, and we're just gonna have to be careful with that once we get them in, because construction still is gonna be happening out there.
Yeah, the question I would ask, you have the ability to allow no parking so that you can clean the pavers. That will be the challenge, I think. Because if you're gonna have a lot of parking down there, if you're gonna clean them, you can't have parking while you're cleaning them.
Well, and did I hear Chris use twice a year these would
Yeah, about
typically
twice a
get
year.
vacuumed?
Ideally in the spring and fall.
Yeah,
The spring, all the winter crud, and the fall, all the leaves.
yeah.
They probably have to post it a few days before saying it's gonna be closed during this day. They're gonna suck it out with their machine, and then they're gonna come back with small chips, right, again? They're gonna sprinkle them down and broom them in, not chips, but
Typical cleaning, you don't clean the chips.
You're
up.
just-
It's
you're just gonna
when you
suck
wanna
the top.
Rejuvenate the surface,
Right.
and go a deeper clean
Right.
and do the chips.
and that's about every 5 years, I think is what, 5, depending on the situation.
Depends on the runoff.
Yep, depending on the
Depends how you
runoff. Right. Well, we gotta let some water get there in order for it to work now, Chris. But yes, you're right, it does.
Any other initial feedback that you need from us, Josh? Sorry, Rob, did I miss you? Sorry.
Sorry. I disagree with everything Chris said.
Good.
Couple of comments. For the poles and the lighting standards, I think it should be a standalone fixture and not the traditional shepherd's hook. I think this is a different showcase piece, and it could be complementary and not too modern, but something a little bit different, and a little more contemporary, I think would be good. For the landscape treatment, especially in that hardscape area, it'd be nice to have some trees in there, like you said. Depending on, nice thing about Monona Drive is the terraces were pretty good size, and the trees are thriving. In a hardscape situation with tree grates, that soil's garbage usually, and those trees do not grow. So I would suggest, if budget allows, doing some sort of soil cell underneath there.
Yeah, we've been talking about that.
As much as you can afford helps. I don't know if the whole thing has to be soil celled, but just doing a ring around. It's basically a plastic structure that sits underneath the pavement that keeps the soil from getting compacted in it, and you add good soil for the trees. So
You can direct a little bit of the street water to it too, a little bit better. You know,
yep,
through
there's
some of
irrigation systems you
through
can
some of
tie
this,
in
yeah.
that
Yeah.
work as well. For the parking lot street, let's call it.
Yep.
For that, I think a different lighting fixture would be more prudent for that. Something that's just like a blade fixture that kind of disappears.
Yep.
Simple. I'm all for the pervious pavements. I think that's great. Be less snow accumulation on those and ice because of that. For streetscape amenities, I would suggest whatever the final determination is we stick with a family from a singular brand as much as possible. Now, if we're sticking with Sternberg or Cree, they won't have a full suite of site amenities, but I think when you get a trash, a bench, bollard even sometimes, from the same manufacturer, it just ties things together a little better. For the tabletop, I think that's great. On either side of the road, I see an opportunity to do something a little bit different there, whether it's a repetition of boulders, planters, those street trees and tree grates, but just kind of intensify things a little bit at that point, I think is... I had a question for the boat. For the yacht club there, you show hardscape on either side of the path there.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that and why that wouldn't be?
I'm open to either one, and maybe that's something we want to talk with the yacht club a little bit about. So the space and circulation and just having, room to turn and be able to kind of run over things if that accidentally happened versus having something that, that could be run over landscaping wise, kind of was up in the air both ways. Before we were showing, I think, some landscaping along there, and we kind of changed that, but it could go either way. Yeah, I'm open to suggestions.
I think there's maybe some opportunity, even if that hardscape is just down the ends to, for the most likely scenario to get run over.
If
We,
I don't mean run over a bed.
I was just gonna say, we talked about that, the part, on the backside of the yacht club, or on that side, about possibly doing a row of bushes maybe there, or like he was talking about doing one of those sunken, well type things, so that some of the water from our, because in that corner there is a big storm sewer.
Okay.
And then about where the road, right about there's a big storm sewer.
Storm up there, yeah.
And then down in the other corner, kind of near that building, there's another storm sewer there. And so we talked about possibly diverting some of the water from those two areas into one of those sunken flower beds and putting a row of bushes in there to isolate or insulate the bike path from the parking lot area, so we didn't have people with bicycles right next to it. Because there should be, the idea is to put three parking stalls there, parallel parking stalls.
Okay.
So, yeah, we did change it. We had more
Thank you,
space there.
Steve.
What's that?
I just was thanking Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's it.
We did have more space there, and we were really trying to maximize parking. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3 stalls in here for just parallel too. Otherwise, this was a little bit larger at one point. And again, this is kind of a work in progress at this point. We don't quite have it pinned down with the yacht club yet. We're working towards kind of that ultimate solution.
Okay. Yeah, just a question. I would request in my opinion, for any colored concrete, we try to get away from a pink
Yep.
as much as possible. I much prefer a darker color. And that's all I have.
Great. Is there anything burning that you feel like you need before we?
Can I
close
comment?
this? Oh, I'm sorry. See, this is what happens when I jump from one side to the other. Apologies.
I'm not sure of anything really important, but I do want to reiterate what Chris said about we need to spend the money to do it right. I can't tell you how many compliments I get from people on Monona Drive because of the streetscape, so that's really important. You talked about the color of, if we're going to color it. I think it would make sense, and I assume you're doing this, that the coordination of plantings, landscaping, colors is done consistent, and the lights with the buildings that are going down there, so it looked like it was all planned. That
Right.
that they would, I'm not sure how you do it, and the park is completely different, but I would hate to see things clash.
That's fair, and we're struggling with that a little bit, and maybe we just, with the development team, we need to talk on both sides. It sounds like Building C is gonna try to now mimic Building A, which is good, because before they were different, so we were competing on that, and then I guess, but like Nancy said, we haven't really decided on the park yet, and I think that's maybe a task for the park, is are you gonna try to match more of this style, and then can we just all incorporate it together on the road? And I agree, we should try hard, and we want to try hard to kind of try to make this fit all together. And that's still a task that we have to do, yeah.
And I think the maintenance is, we have to be able to maintain what we have down there.
Yep.
Yeah, Chris.
A couple more. Can you go back to the plan that shows it overlaid with the aerial? It's just the easiest one to see. That one probably is good. It's probably hard from the first comment, though. He briefly talked about it, and this is probably an alignment we wouldn't allow anywhere else. If you look at the parking lot road, those stalls are so close to the road, when they back out, they'll stop somebody from turning off of Bridge Road. Traffic will be backed up, and it's possible the same thing could happen on Broadway, how close they are. So I think that's something we'll want to at least pay attention to, because if a car backs up and a car's turning off of Broadway trying to get in here, we could create a little bit of a traffic hazard that we might not want to create. And I know every stall is precious. The other thing on the parking lot road, we'll call it, because I don't know what else to call it, that exceeds our normal code. It's more than 12 stalls before you have a tree island, and I know we're trying to conserve everyone, but I also know we're looking for places to put trees, and I don't know, I counted, there's like 15 or so
Yeah,
stalls.
they are. You're right.
You kind of did, the guy that reviews our codes didn't.
Yeah. I should have pointed that out.
Yeah.
We are on spacing wise, we do not meet spacing. On road wise, like I was saying before, we're close to a lot of these roads.
So
They won't be backing out onto the road, but they definitely are gonna stop somebody from pulling in when those
They'll
stalls
be
are coming
stopped
up.
on the
Yep.
road. And before I say too many more of these, will we get a chance to look at this again before it's finalized?
We're thinking if that can be accommodated, but our next meeting might not be until June 25th, and I think there would still be an opportunity, because you're out for advertising bids, and then
Yeah.
we don't open until a
It
few
would be
weeks
great
later.
if we could, and the only reason I mention it now is, things like, we really need an island here, or do we really not need an island there? Those are minor things that could be
Yep.
done at that time. The overall, big picture things I know you need to know right now, but when I'm talking about island here and there. Another question, are you on Public Works, Chad?
I am, I'm
Okay,
chair.
did Public Works consider permeable asphalt for the parking lanes on the parking lot road?
So like the
It
whole
wasn't
thing.
discussed, so I made a note.
No,
that
I mean,
wanted to-
what I'm thinking is I would put regular asphalt right down through the driving lanes and then permeable in all the parking areas if that's an option, or if anybody looked at. Here's the thing with permeable. Now, the sub-base costs more, 'cause you gotta put in the aggregate storage layer, you have to have a way to drain it off. I assume we won't have infiltration adequate to infiltrate it
No.
all. Hey, if we do, that's fine, if we have the soils, but we probably won't, so
I
we'll
don't
have to
think
have a
you
leader. But all it is a drain tile down in a 12-inch clear stone aggregate layer. So the sub-base costs a little more, but I will tell you, you get your money's worth, because that road will last longer because of that sub-base. If we built all our roads with 12 inches of clear stone and drain tile, we wouldn't have the frost issues we do, we wouldn't have a lot of the things. So
Yeah.
you spend a little more, but you get a little more. Now, the permeable asphalt's tougher to clean once it plugs. It'll probably last a good while, but then once it plugs, and I will give my pitch for all BMPs, we're putting in permeable to catch sediment, right? So when it plugs, that means it's done its job. It's caught a lot of sediment. If we put in a biobasin, it plugs. Once it catches enough sediment, it's designed to catch so much sediment. When we put, any BMP we put in for water quality is meant to catch the sediment. So it's not necessarily a bad thing when it does eventually plug. That means it's doing its job. So from a public works standpoint, I'm not sure I would be totally upset about that. And there are different cleaners. This is not one that the city's bought, but there's a cyclonic cleaner that we tested at the test plot. It'll actually rejuvenate asphalt and concrete. It does a great job, and there's a couple people in Milwaukee area looking at buying it. I mean, it's the kind of thing you'd have to travel all over the state. So there will be things, as this pavement gets more and more, there will be ways to unclog it, but I'm just throwing that out, that maybe that's an option you want to look at there too, because if we're looking at trying to get our water quality up, it's a great place to put it.
Sure.
And there you could just do the permeable asphalt, which is a lot less money than the permeable traffic pavers. So one more area to look at. I'm going to reiterate what keeps being said, landscaping. I know we want a lot of streetscape in some of these areas, but even those streetscapes, to have your sunken planters, raised planters, whatever you can do to get more green here. Because this whole development's got a lot of hardscape and not a lot of soft. So I know we have things to do, but man, anywhere you can think about that. You talked about the salt and sand. We absolutely cannot sand permeable pavement. But we also, you'll find, and this is something that we're looking at real strongly, we'll likely use a lot less salt too. Because the permeable tends to melt a lot better. There's been a bunch of tests done up in Minnesota with similar conditions with standard pavement and salt and permeable with no salt. And right after a storm, the permeable has some icing on it, and the stuff, of course, has been salted, it's clear and liquid flowing. After 3 days, the permeable is better than where they'd salted, and the salt's all run down the drain, and it's icing, and the permeable pavement is pretty much clear. So there are some advantages as far as less salt use, and certainly we have to be careful about sanding it. If we put it in, you have to be aware of that. Your idea of temporary pavement for that raised table is, it has to be. As a contractor, I don't know how I'd get equipment in and out of there if you put all this stuff in here. At least it gives whoever does this a place to unhook the lowboy, unload equipment, get in and out. So I'd say that temporary there is, anything can be done, but we're gonna spend a lot more money as a community if we don't do something like that. And lastly, I know when we did Monona Drive, we spent a lot of time with all the businesses looking at parking layouts to help them and show where we could add more in there, and Strand did that, and they did a great job with it. Have we looked at that with the yacht club? Because I was out there, I paced that area, and I know you probably don't want to lose it, but where you have your boat storage next to the park, it's about 60 feet wide. You could put a double-faced parking lot right in there, and I think you could get 20 stalls right there, 20 stalls of parking right on your own property. And you know, something we could look at as far as when you're looking at this access, if they wanted to do that, they could get in there and swing. It's about big enough for that.
Yeah.
And 20 stalls would be huge for you all.
Yeah, except that we would lose the boat storage.
You'd lose the boat storage, I know, and I know,
Right.
but you have to balance what's more important to you at this point.
Totally agree.
And for me, just looking at it, I don't know your business, but you still have boat storage on the other side. You'd lose the brunt of it, but you could get 20 stalls that you control on your own property.
Right. And
So is this,
yeah, the only thing I can say is I think we're already giving up an awful lot.
so is this something, you know, we could always sketch it out when we're doing other stuff?
We
And-
didn't look at that because we thought you needed boat storage, but yes, I agree with Chris, you could
That's a lot of
definitely accommodate quite a bit more parking if you didn't have the boats there, yeah.
And then lastly, we talked about it around it, but we never said it. I'm going to assume this street project, when you put it out, is going to be like every other street project you do, which maintains access.
Mhm.
And we're always more sensitive to businesses than we are even residential. And I'm sure when you draw this up, there's going to be something in the plans and specs that whoever is the successful bidder will be keeping the businesses open.
Yep.
Am I right in saying that?
We've kicked that around a lot on how are we gonna build this thing while providing enough space for the breakwater and the yacht club. Because we know they're gonna still have people that wanna come there. And that's gonna be we still have to work on that a little bit. We've been talking about potentially trying to do some of this parking lot and stuff over here first. I know that's further away to walk, but at least give a place to park out of that. We're thinking through that, Chris, that hasn't been vetted out yet, but yeah, we understand that. Yeah.
I've worked with these guys. They're really tough on keeping parking open and access to residences and businesses open. Thank you.
Anything else? Susan?
Well, just this minor, if the pavers are an issue for that piece of the bike path, I guess the other thought would be colored concrete just for that one area.
Yeah, I was
The
thinking
reason
that
I'm so big on that is because every time I go down John Knoll now, when they painted that green strip, it
Yeah.
just really jumps out at you, and so you really are very aware. And signage alone, I don't think does it. It would be helpful maybe to have the bushes, like the gentleman said about, for that one section of the, even if you have hardscape on one side, if you have bushes on the other,
Yeah.
that would help too, but I would think about that area more.
Yeah, I agree that that will make it pop, some sort of color there as you're crossing them. It's just
Right.
it's a different surface, right?
It'd be smoother, and if you're gonna do concrete anyway, then you wouldn't notice any difference. Chad?
I want to just second Chris's comment about maybe sacrificing a few of those parking spots that are close to where we're coming into to Metropolitan Lane and the parking road, and considering just, having another place for additional retention features and, a tree or whatever, growing a swamp oak or something.
Can I say, you're on Plan Commission now, a tree is not a whatever. Trees are important.
Well, absolutely, yes, so forgive me. Yes, I didn't mean to.
It would be nice, and I know maybe we can't do it tonight, is what are your thoughts on the parking about, going to your code and adding a couple spots for trees? And, I agree, I do agree with you, Chris. When we were laying this out, I told the guys, well, you got to fit what you got to fit. We're trying to get as many spaces as possible here. Let them take it off later. Let's show them to it now. Let's show them what you could do now. This one and these couple are closer. Now, I mean, like you said, we don't have to do it now, but when I'm laying out grades and I'm getting close to final, it's nice to just know kind of what you guys want. So I won't have to change that later. Does anybody have any actual, and if we got to wait, we'll wait till later. I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't be putting you on the
I'm
spot.
more concerned about the Beltline ones.
I agree with Kathy. On Broadway, I'm just worried that somebody has refuge. If they start that turn and somebody starts pulling out in front of them, they're going to slam on their brakes, and that's going to be a traffic nightmare on Broadway. Bridge Road, they've got to be going slower right there by the stoplights, but if there's enough room for that car to have refuge before that other one backs into them, that would be a lot safer.
What's the speed limit there?
Broadway 40.
Is it 40 all the way?
Yeah.
Well, how fast do they go, or what's the speed
Well, it's
limit?
the speed limit. It's 40.
So I agree, there's like 3 spaces here, the one at Broadway, the first one at Broadway, and then the 2 at the bridge there that are close. So, I mean, you could go from, I think I was showing 101, and you could eliminate 3 and probably solve that concern where at least they could get out and that person could pull in.
Have refuge
Just at least
somewhere.
one person to pull in refuge prior to getting out of the road. I don't think that's a bad comment.
Just for
Weren't we considering though, weren't we considering at one point putting a stoplight on Broadway, at that exit?
There will not be a stoplight here.
Oh, you don't want to
No.
stop right
Okay.
there.
There'll be a right in and right out and a left in from this side. You can turn in. You will not be able to make a left out of here.
just one opinion, but for me, the safety, the traffic safety, losing a couple stalls for that would be more important than adding the tree island somewhere else, just to have another tree island.
That's the point I wanted to make.
Anything else? Any other feedback? Before we move on. Josh, thank you.
Thank you for discussing this.
Okay, so since that was taken out of order, I'd like to go back now to unfinished business E, which is public hearing on the proposed changes to section 48020 of the Monroe Municipal Zoning Code pertaining to historic conservation, case number 2-007-2018. Thank you for your patience. I'll do it.
Interesting to listen to anyway. So I don't have a PowerPoint tonight. Sorry. I really only have a few comments. I think we took back the input we had from Plan Commission a few months ago and made changes, I think responding to all or most of those comments. The first under the definitions sections, contributing versus non-contributing resources. Basically, that means that the restrictions within a historic district would only apply to the contributing resources, not to the non-contributing. But it's, Sonia, jump in if I get any of this wrong. That was, let's see. And then the other major piece is at the end, variances, where we added a section on variances. And there are several different types of variances that a landowner could obtain, one of which I'll just highlight is the economic, number 4, economic hardship variance, that would essentially allow someone to show that they had attempted, let's see, where is it? It would deny them a reasonable rate of return on investment or impose unreasonable and unnecessary hardship. So I sort of respond to some of the concerns from the prior meeting, I think. That's really all I had to say, so most people have questions.
Great. Is there anybody else that wants to speak to this? Okay, great. Then we'll close the public hearing and move on to F, consideration of action on proposed changes to section 48020 of the Monona Municipal Zoning Code pertaining to historic conservation, case number 2007-2018. Sonia.
Just a reminder of where we are process-wise. The Plan Commission is being asked tonight to take action either to approve this as a recommendation to City Council. You can approve it with changes, or you could recommend that these do not get approved at Council. But either way, this is the version that the Landmarks Commission has put forth, and then Plan Commission also has a recommendation. City Council makes the final decision.
Thank you. I'm going to start on this side again. Griff.
I have no comments at this time.
Okay. Susan.
I don't either. I appreciate the changes that were put in. They addressed a lot that we talked about.
Okay. Brian?
All the changes look good. I am reading the comments. It's not listed on the page, so it's underneath the variance for C and the shall versus may.
Right, so it started out as shall, meaning all those things would be required. The Plan Commission had recommended changing it to may. Landmarks changed it to should, which is sort of kind of in between. In other words, you don't absolutely you have to submit all those things, but that would be the ideal. Sort of, they should submit them.
Okay. And I think I remember the discussion we had with, like, based on the variance, and are these all actually requirements? Because not all of them necessarily would exist in every situation. And I think that was why we were leaning towards the may last year. But I think the should is just as fine as may. That looks good. Thank you.
Chad?
I think we should.
No Rob? No comment. Kathy?
I'll pass for the moment.
That's good line.
Chris?
Really? I still think it's a take in the value. I mean, this is onerous for an owner, and I appreciate some of the considerations. I think at least talking about contributing versus non-contributing for district. I'm just still not sure what the district is going to be. It doesn't talk a lot about it in here, the districts, but it at least helps that situation. I think the variances, the 4 that you talked about, for example, the economic hardship, it's if all of the following apply. So it's not just the economic, but the circumstances have to justify that they weren't by the owner's fault, but they don't apply to a substantial portion of the district. Well, everybody in the district could be having the same problem, and then there's no and then they can't meet it. And it also says it also will not alter the historic character of the district. Well, if they're asking for a variance, it's going to alter the historic character of the district by some people's interpretations. So I think it's still, I mean, it's nice to put something in that could help them, but I don't think that could be much help if somebody takes a literal interpretation of this document. I think the should, may, shall, I think you've hurt yourself by saying should. I think you've softened your position. Because should means it's kind of like, you should give us this. If you say may, in my mind, required documents may include, and staff and the Landmark Commission tells them what's required for this particular submittal. So if I was sitting on Landmark Commission, I'd want to have the may, because I said, we may require this. The whole point was, if it shall, there's things here like rental income. There might not be rental income.
Right.
And things like that. So what you're saying is required documentation may include the following. And at that point, the Landmark Commission or staff decides what they want on that particular submittal. When you say it should, then somebody say, well, it should, but I'm not going to give that one.
Right.
I think you softened it for yourself by doing that, but that's
Yeah, no, I
just
see
a
the
comment.
point, yeah.
And again, on the historic design variance, it says if all of the following apply. So I think what you've done, and again, I'm going to say the concern for a property owner, and I started circling times. If you go through all these time frames, they might be able to get a variance, but it might take a year to get it. And I think that's an encumbrance on a property. And I know a lot of people feel like it's more valuable to be in a design district. And I think that's great if it is. But the economics will prove that out if people can sell them or people really want to be in it. All I'm trying to protect is the person that says, I don't want to have this hardship to have to do all this, or especially to try to tear it down. Because if you look at the tearing it down, you gave the 6 months and then a few other things, but at the end of the day, you still don't have to allow it if you don't want. So somebody to try to tear down a property has to go through almost, I don't want to exaggerate, maybe a 7-8 month process, and at the end, there's still uncertainty. They don't know if it's going to happen. And I'm a firm believer, if as a community, we feel like this is important to save, and we have an unwilling owner, then we should pony up, and we should save that place. We should go through, at least there should be someone here, somewhere in this document, we talked about at our first meeting, where there could be a substantive, whatever, substantive.
Substantive.
Thank you. Negotiation between the city and that owner, that they have to try to negotiate in good faith and let the city. I don't want to get held up by a property owner that doesn't want to sell. But if you get to the point where we're offering them fair market value and they don't want to sell, then it's their problem. Then they're not a willing seller. Yes.
May I ask you a question? Because I want to understand your point. How, without this ordinance and code, would the city or anyone else have the opportunity to step in and save a building that has historic significance? And what I mean by that is right now, we don't really have any mechanism for protecting buildings or neighborhoods, and so there's no opportunity to save it. I mean, you granted the demolition permit and it's gone.
I completely agree with you, and I completely agree that we need this ordinance. What I don't agree on is that there's no way out for that owner, and at that point where we want to save it as a community, it's important to us, we buy it. No different than we do on our TIF districts. You know, if we really want it, we buy it. And if it's important to the city, if it's important to our community and to our standards, if that owner doesn't want it to be a historical district, then we go in negotiations and buy it. If we can't buy it, then slap it on. But have some way in here that there can be a fair opportunity for that owner that doesn't want to be in a historic building, for whatever reason, then to do something about it. And I like what you put in here. You put in here that there has to be some negotiation for some of these things for the original owner, but no subsequent owner. I like that a lot. Because once the original owner is done, when this is put into place, every other owner knows what they're getting into. They know it's under this ordinance. So the only place this negotiation would ever come into place is when you first put it on against somebody that doesn't want it. And so at least there's some mechanism for that person. If somebody else buys it, they bought it knowing what they're buying. Totally on board with that. I like that. That was a great addition.
If I could just the city could still buy the property, but we don't need anything in the ordinance to allow the city, city council to direct the city attorney to negotiate to acquire property.
No, I'm just saying some safeguard for that property owner, so they knew there's something other than just saying, we are going to put this on your property, you have nothing to say about it, see ya.
Well,
That's
that's
what I
why we
just-
put in all the variants.
Variances are
Variance.
almost impossible to have, if you read them. Everything, they're hard. They're
Yeah,
hard to hit.
right,
They're
like
very
they are
hard.
with anything in the zoning code, variances are granted, they're not supposed to be granted easily. So I agree, yeah.
So while you've been talking, Chris, I could see that Kathy's brain was just churning away, and now she's got her hand up, so Kathy.
Well, I live in a house that potentially could be historic. I don't know what declares them historic and what doesn't. There are a number of houses, I live in international style houses, there are a number of them that are, and quite frankly, I want to know where my protection is as a resident of this city, because I think it feels like this takes the rights away from people who live in houses that are potentially historic. I mean, I absolutely agree with Kit. I mean, I don't feel protected. I feel like the city is taking my rights away, because you don't have to give me a variance. You don't have to buy my property. You can just say, too bad. And I can take you to court, and I can spend thousands of dollars for a lawyer to protect my property or to get my rights. And maybe I can win and maybe I can't. And if somebody's going to buy my house, they may or may not want to buy it if they can't do it. And what I don't know is, maybe nobody ever wants to name any of these houses historic. I have no idea. And if you do, how do you decide which ones? But I have little or no say about it. And that's what's troubling to me. And it would be troubling to me if it was somebody else's house and not mine. So I'm in agreement with Chris, but I'm biased because the potential exists for me.
Well, I was just gonna, the person from the Historical Society who came that night did say that he really strongly recommended declaring any of these properties historic landmarks without the approval of the owners. I mean, he said that, he felt like that was an important piece. And I know that doesn't put anything in stone, but he felt like you really need to work with people and have them understand the full impact of that and the full value of it. And because a lot of people do appreciate having their homes declared as historic. So he said people will have different viewpoints, but he really said you don't want to go down that road of just declaring a bunch of them as landmarks without involving the owners. I don't know if that helps at all, but.
If I could just jump back in quickly. So we do have a grant for a citywide architectural survey that we're in the process of. I think we're sending out the RFPs very soon for that, and that'll help us figure out what properties do we want to designate. But I totally agree that we're not going to. This Landmarks Commission, and I don't think future ones, is going to go looking for fights with people who don't want their properties designated. For one thing, there's going to be plenty of work for this Landmarks Commission to do in the next few years after we get the architectural survey done. Moreover, I mean, it's the Landmarks Commission, it's an advisory commission that people can be asked to get off of it, and if they're going against, sort of the city ethos, community ethos. So I know they can't, that's not in the ordinance, but I think that's as a practical matter would be kind of consistent with the way we do business here in my
Why
experience.
wouldn't you put in the ordinance then?
How can you I don't know how you can put that in the ordinance, that you would never do it?
No, you could say you could consult with, that the owner would have to agree.
Well, we can't put in that the owner would have to agree, because then we wouldn't be able, we already had that. That's already in the ordinance, that if we do that, we wouldn't be a certified local government, we wouldn't be eligible for any of the grants from the state or federal government.
I'm your friend from the government, trust me.
Well, Kathy, I mean, we've both served in city government a long time, and I would hope, you know, the way we've done things in Monona, there would be some credibility to saying that.
If I may comment. I've dealt with this on a number of occasions as the contractor working with a homeowner whose house is in a historic district. And mostly in the city of Madison, the Third Lake District is a large district on the isthmus. And the process can, I mean, I speak only to my experience in Madison. That process can be onerous, and it is true that most of these homeowners have already known that they bought a home that was in this district. I think it was designated in 1976, but I'm not sure on that. But the reality is that it allows a group of homes to have a standard. They are homes of architectural and historic significance, and the community has decided with an ordinance like this that we respect the past, we respect these buildings that are a part of our community, and we have created a mechanism to protect those buildings as part of our community. I mean, that's what this is about. So I would say for people that really care about the past and the roots of this community, there are buildings of significance that this mechanism allows us to regulate. I mean, it is true that, I mean, you can obtain variances. We do it all the time.
No.
We do. We do in the city
We
of
also
Madison.
deny them, well, in Monona, we deny them a lot, too.
Well, but I've been on the ZBA for many years, and I mean, we allow things and then we disallow things. But if you don't have rules, then it's just anarchy. And so this is a mechanism for saying what are the standards and how are we going to deal with a building that is of historic significance. I think by not having an ordinance like this, what we're really saying is that the buildings in this community that are historic, we don't care, they can go away. That is in fact what our law is right now. And so I don't think that's consistent with our community values. And I mean, I want to hear what you all are saying, and I'm listening. But I just think as a big picture perspective, this allows us to respect that legacy that we have. And it's always messy. I get what you're saying. Like, no one wants to be told you can't do this to your home. But the building code prescribes many things that a homeowner cannot do to their home for reasons of safety or structural integrity.
That's different.
Well, it is different, and I'm not saying, but it is still the community imposing its values on private property.
No, it's public protection.
Well, right, but this is about our cultural heritage.
My husband would probably say, oh, good, let's go for it. He wants to be historic because his parents built the house. And I would say to you, if the city is willing to make me whole for money that I might lose, then I'd say, it's great. I'm being greedy here. I may lose a lot of money in the value of my home. That is my concern. If I stand to lose that money, will the city make me whole? That's the question for me.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I think section O, I think addresses the issue about the sale. That if you're unable to find a buyer willing to pay fair market value and to preserve such structure, even though he or she has made reasonable attempts, and then it goes on so that they can petition the commission for a rescission of the designation. So, I mean, there is an aspect in there of if you're not able to sell the home at a fair market value, that there is a way to address it through that mechanism as well as variances. But I want to go back to something maybe even simpler. We already have this on the books in the sense of the elements that are being proposed here for changes are a few definition changes, the addition of what's a contributing versus non-contributing. The item that I just talked about of the city in the fair market value and bringing it to have it rescinded from a designation, and the ability to get a variance. That's the only thing that we're suggesting changes. And if we don't do any of those, all of the concerns that have been voiced here still exist. And actually, they exist even more. So, I mean, I'm trying to point out some of the pieces of the concerns that are raised here around how do I, if I'm the owner, I'm not part of the nomination process currently. If I'm the owner and it is nominated and deemed a landmark currently, and I want to sell it and can't get fair market value, I don't have an appeal process. This fixes that issue. And if I have financial hardship and can't keep up the structure currently, I don't have a mechanism to address that. But with this, I would. Do I have it accurate?
Yes.
I appreciate that explanation. It does put it in a different light. I did look at O, the rescission. You can petition for rescission. That's all it says. And if they grant the rescission, then it'll be, so, yeah.
It doesn't get
So
to the bigger issue.
you can ask the people that put it on when you didn't want it to please take it off. And if they do, then it can be rescinded, and if not, then it's still on. So, I mean, it's nice to have the verbiage there, it's nice to have a mechanism, it's just, my whole thing with it is just, it'd be nice if there's some little stronger protection for that initial homeowner, because that's where, to me, it's different than building code. Building code, I bought that home knowing what the building code, or that there was a building code, and it was on my home. When she bought her home, she didn't know it was going to be designated a historic landmark, which changes the situation.
There is no grandfathering.
I'm completely on board with doing this. If you don't recall, my mother was one of the original people on Landmarks Commission and was there until she couldn't serve anymore. She helped save the Dean House. I mean, saving our, the things that are important in our community runs very deep in our family. I'm not against this whatsoever. The only issue I saw with it from the beginning was the person it affects that they bought that home without that condition, and now it is an encumbrance. I mean, it is, you deal with them. It's a lot more work to go through getting permits and getting different things, and so it may not affect the value, but it may. And that's the whole point I've been trying to make through this whole thing. As far as your point, Brian, that this is on the books, I think we lost sight of that. It's on the books, so these changes, and I very much appreciate her coming back to address some of the concerns we had. And you didn't have to do that, and I think it's great to bring them back. But I'm obligated to say, hey, this is great, but boy, if we could have addressed this one item, that sure would have been nice. Just to give some way for that homeowner to petition, say, we have the economic hardship, I understand that, but if you read the other items with it, you have to meet all those items, not just the economic hardship, and that's what makes it difficult.
I just wanted to point out another opportunity to discuss potential incentives or financial assistance for property owners. And I don't know details of what we can and can't do, but it's not something that we would be codifying in the ordinance, but rather later developing these incentive programs. And we could potentially, I'm guessing, use some of this grant money that the Wisconsin Historical Society, now that we're eligible for, to put into some sort of program. Or there is the affordable housing TIF extension with using our TIF districts, where 25% of 1 year of the increment in that TIF district is allowed to be put forth to improve the general housing stock in the community. So there might be some opportunities within those areas to create some sort of incentive program that we could look at. It doesn't address the concern immediately in the ordinance, but it's an option that we'll look into further.
Yeah, I think that, I might be wrong, but I think the historical grants that you can get are to historic districts, but so if the city were to do something, you can do for roof repair, for example. If you're a landmark house, you can get those grants for roof repair, but I think you have to be in the historic district, I'm not positive, but the city could set something up like that. I was just gonna point out, we have the wrong word in here, it says recession, and it should be rescission
Okay.
under that, so it should be RESCISSION instead of recession.
So to point out a clarification, for nomination within the review piece, there is a notification, although there was a nomination form at one time attached to this, and I don't see it now because I understand it was more procedural rather than ordinance.
Correct.
And there was the component about exactly to the point that we've discussed here multiple times, the idea of the initial nomination is the nomination. I think many of us are concerned around property rights and someone making a nomination on a property that they don't own. An idea of how to make sure that the owner is involved in that discussion, and if there is a difference between the property owner and the others that are nominating, that is clear as it's coming forward to the different bodies. I mean, I think that's the key piece of, if I'm nominating Kathy's house, which I'm gonna do tomorrow, that we notify her and Bill and let Bill show up. With the explicit option for them to be able to kind of present their concerns of why they don't want that. And I don't see a body in the city necessarily going against the property owner unless they're willing to put their money where their mouth is. But hopefully I'm not wrong.
Other comments, discussion?
I have a question, if I may. We had a discussion before in reviewing the proposed ordinance about who might initiate the nomination procedure. And the present verbiage reads that any person or the Landmarks Commission may nominate a building or structure. And the question was raised, well, any person would suggest anyone from the outside, for whatever reason, might initiate this procedure. Has in fact has the Landmark Commission ever received any nominations by outside people, or in the past, has the Landmark Commission initiated questions of landmark designation?
Well, I've only been chair for a little over a year, and no, in that time we haven't. The mayor's saying no, they didn't when she was chair. I think I think that one of the changes we're looking at tonight would expressly allow the Landmarks Commission to nominate, and that wasn't clear before. Or, no, I guess it was. So, but I think after we do the citywide survey, it is likely we will need to redesignate the existing landmarks. And so I think it's important that the Landmarks Commission be able to initiate the process.
Well, I'm less concerned about the Landmarks Commission initiating the process than the language that any person, for whatever reason, can initiate the process. And I'm wondering what if we restricted it to the Landmarks Commission? Then at least there would be some body that would consider some of these factors before this whole process got underway. Would you see that as a material problem?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure if maybe Sonia has something on that.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this would help clarify, but whoever it is that's nominating it, whether it's the commission or any person, they're required to fill out a form, which Brian referenced, and it's not going to be attached to the ordinance in any way, but the Landmarks Commission approved it. And it's based on standards in this code. So section C, underneath the word certificate of appropriateness, that is the historic structure, site, and district designation criteria. So you have to, when you submit that form, explain how it meets those designation criteria, and you're supposed to support that nomination form with factual information, documents of that history, and then that goes and is reviewed by the Landmarks Commission. They make a recommendation, and then that goes to council. So there are a lot of people reviewing that information and whether it is worthy of being designated, if that helps.
So I think to Griff's point is that what keeps a architectural buff in international style housing to nominate a house even though they live in California? But I don't know if that's what you mean. Just any person can nominate it. There's no boundary for who can make a nomination. Maybe it's never going to happen. But I mean, the unlikely scenario. But
I think Sonia's point is that the screener is the Landmarks Commission. So it really wouldn't matter if somebody from California made the nomination.
Even if
the reality is the Landmarks Commission is going to put it through their filter to determine whether or not there's legitimacy to that. So whether or not it's viable.
So would they deny it just because they're from California? Or what if they provided all the factual information and historical evidence? And this is a shot in the dark, but why is it any? And I don't know where you create a boundary of.
No, I think you're right. I mean, any person means any person, so anybody could do it. I think it's highly unlikely that would happen, but, who knows?
Agreed.
It could, with the internet. If we want to change it to only the Landmarks Commission may nominate, I guess I'd be okay with that, as long as, there would, obviously, anybody could bring it to the attention of the Landmarks Commission that here's a property that, should be designated. But this is really just kicking off the process, so.
I guess I take the point, I think it's a good point on one level, but I guess what I'm seeing is then what you would do as a practical matter is if, as a citizen or as just a human that had a particular concern for a building, you would then contact someone on the Landmarks Commission to share that concern so that that individual could then nominate the building, which to me seems a little clunky. This whole process has all these safeguards in it. And it's just like any citizen who could have come here tonight to petition us or make an appearance. Someone who puts forth an application for a structure has to take the time to build the case. Then the Landmarks Commission might decide this really isn't, this building does not qualify based on our standards. So then it would go away. Or if they did think it did and just our community had missed it, then it would go through this process, which the commission and then the council would have to sign off on. So I guess I'm not feeling a great concern that this would be abused, because I feel like the process is still going to be carried through. And I don't think it's going to burn up a bunch of time. I don't think we need to be worried about, staff is going to be inundated with applications or something. Though that would concern me if I felt that was the issue.
But if this is, as you said earlier, Chad, about our community values, then it at minimum should be someone from the community or someone representing the community.
Just
Should it
one
not?
alternative scenario could be you grew up in the bungalow and house and you moved away and now you live over the border in Illinois and you really care about it because your grandparents built it, and you still care and you care about your community's heritage, and so that would be one opportunity for you to nominate that house even though you no longer live in Monona.
Potentially thank someone that nominated for nominating a property that wasn't picked up by residents, I guess.
Well, there could be a difference of opinion where you'd have a Landmarks Commission that didn't think that certain time periods of structures are worthy of designation, and somebody from the outside, somebody who lives here in Monona might say, well, yeah, things that were built in the 1960s are now over 50 years old, and so, yeah, they should be considered, and, they'd have a mechanism to force at least consideration of those, but I guess I agree with Chad. I don't have a great concern about it, but, so.
Would anybody like to make a motion? Yes.
Not a motion, I asked the question, would it hurt the ordinance to say any resident or the Landmarks Commission? Then in Sonia's example, somebody that really feels strong about it could send a letter to the Landmark Commission and say, hey, this is the architectural style you should really consider. My uncle built this house and I think it should be preserved. Would it give anybody else any peace of mind that it's at least the individuals nominating things are residents and have a stake in Monona?
What do you think? I know, sorry.
So, I think the current language is useful and with any person, and the reason being for a few. One, the nomination is no low bar. It's not like I just have to jot a few things down and send it in. This is pretty substantial amount of information that someone would have to collect and put together as an argument behind why they think this is deemed a nomination, something credible for a nomination. The other reason I wouldn't want to necessarily restrict it to a resident or the commission, one, the commission can easily be biased, look at us. And the idea of like they may or may not see something as the same as other individuals, and there are many structures, areas, and other levels of significance that may not pertain specifically to current residents. So although we might not have many that come to mind immediately, there are some pieces that there may be no one. So if we look at broad cultural aspects and social history, this area, we have a pretty significant cultural and social history in Monona, with our connection to Native American kind of heritage in the area, and nomination of certain areas may be connected with that, where we may or may not have people that would represent that and nominate it locally. And I wouldn't want to restrict it based on that. So that would, and if Kathy's son from California really does want to nominate, he can co-sign my nomination for your house.
Chad?
I just wanted to add, I mean, I do really respect that the local community will in fact be the final arbiter of this, and that's the Landmarks Commission and then the council. So, I think we want to be the protectors of our community, but allow the broader world to help us see what we may want to cherish. So I'm not concerned, well, whatever.
Okay. I will ask again, is there any kind of motion?
I'll move approval.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Are you looking for, well, I'll second it. And then,
did you actually write up a motion as part of this?
No. It would be something along the lines of a motion to recommend approval to council, or you could recommend with changes.
Well, so my motion is to recommend approval to council of the amended statute here that's before us.
Okay.
And I assume that includes the amendment of that word change?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Brian?
yes,
Are you
the
seconding?
second.
Okay.
And then I wanted to add in the piece of some of the discussion around our key points around nomination and the other aspects be highlighted for discussion at the council level, because regardless of what we move forward at this body, like this version's gonna go forward no matter what. But I think the same points that were raised here, I think should be raised at the council level.
We'll include a copy of the Plan Commission minutes for the council and then also summarize the concerns. And you're welcome to attend and speak at council if you want to do it on your own behalf.
So we have a motion and a second. Yes, Chris?
Just for discussion, I usually don't do this, but I need to explain my vote. I'm going to vote yes, because this makes it better. I still feel we could have gone farther to protect that individual, that one or two case, whatever those are. But I believe even the way it is, it's better than what's on the books right now.
I'll move an amendment to the resolution that the Section D on the nomination be changed to restrict the nomination process to the Landmark Commission itself, and the language be changed in D&E to reflect that.
Second.
Second the amendment?
I mean, I voiced my support of this language and why, and I respect that request. I don't support it.
And I'm not sure, Doug, if you'll be able to answer them. With that level of restriction to the nomination, is there a concern regarding the CLG status, which I believe had the more open language, and if it's restricted to that level, will we still meet the requirements from the state and CLG status?
I defer to staff on that.
I don't think it does, but I'm not sure, and we can research it before
Yeah.
council votes and give them that information.
And
I'll amend my, if that can be done and still qualify under the state and other requirements.
And then I just have a clarifying question for Greg.
Yeah.
So if I'm an outside individual and I want to nominate, will I be able to bring it forth to Landmarks and say I want to nominate building X? And then do I expect the Landmarks Commission to do the background work around putting together the nomination, or am I expected as the external individual to do that?
I think that this would restrict the power to initiate the process to the Landmark Commission, so that people could go to the Landmark Commission and we recommend that this is what they should do. This is an action they think would preserve certain historic values in the community, and the Landmark Commission would then review it initially, or however they want to review it, and decide whether it merits going forward at all. Hopefully, the Landmark Commission might even talk to the owner, might consider some of these broader things before this thing ever gets launched. That's my feeling about it.
I think that's what exists in here right now, but it puts the legwork on the individual putting forth the nomination papers, that they have the obligation to bring forth this level of information to the Landmarks Commission to say, I want to do this nomination.
Well, I think the Landmark Commission can decide whether it wants to even begin the process, or how far along it wants to go in the collection of this data. What are all the implications of doing it? And I think because you're going to have a body that's a local body appointed with consisting of residents of the city of Monona, that they're going to take a much more careful and extended view of this before we get into the question of historical designation than a single individual who can just, for whatever reason, decide that this is something that merits historical preservation.
The individual would only be bringing forth the nomination paperwork, which is a procedural step. For the Landmarks Commission to even have a conversation about, does it go anywhere beyond that?
Well, they'll submit the nomination, identify the structure, And then the Landmarks Commission is required to go through this entire process and submit, eventually it submits it to the city planner, I think.
If it's a complete, accurate nomination, the Landmark Commission would go forward with a hearing.
Yeah.
So, Chris,
I just say, I think under Griff's scenario, it's not up to us to tell the Landmark Commission how much information they want when somebody nominates. It's up to them. And they can require that full packet of information, say, if you want to nominate this home, here's the information we want before we'll think about it. So I don't think it necessarily would put the burden on the Landmarks Commission to do it. The Landmark Commission makes their own rules. We're not here to tell them what the rules are on nominations. And if I were on Landmarks Commission, I would probably say, hey, put all this information together, the whys, all the things you're asking for in here anyhow, and bring it to us, and then we'll consider it.
Isn't that what this does?
Yes, but what his motion does is I guess it is, it just takes away that wild card that we're worried about.
so my understanding, and recognize this is my first meeting, but my understanding is that you have a motion on the floor that does not include Griff's amendment.
That's right.
We
We'd
would
vote on the amendment first.
and then we would vote on. if-
Doesn't there have to be a
if his-
second on the amendment?
There
Well, there was.
Kathy seconded.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, I
And
didn't
then,
hear
so-
Kathy's second.
yeah.
Okay,
So then we can vote on that,
Okay.
and then we'll vote on
All right.
whether it's amended or not.
I was thinking that we had to go the other way around, and I didn't hear Kathy's second, so thank you for
Yeah.
pointing that out. All right, so I'd like to take a vote on the amendment that Griff has offered up. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
We should take a, do you want to?
So we have 2 against and 5 in favor, so carries.
It carries, okay. And so now we need to take a vote on the original
Amended.
amended.
Yeah.
As amended, the full motion as amended.
Yep.
If I
Okay.
caught the amendment correctly, it was to verify that there's no concern with the CLG status, and if so,
Great.
at the council
That's
level, that
correct.
be brought up.
Right.
That's right.
Right. Okay. All right, so now we're going to take a vote on the original motion as amended. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Thank you, Doug. Next up, under new business, we have consideration of action on sign permit requests by Joe Quinsig and Mad Raps LLC for Off-Broadway Salon at 6326 Monona Drive, case number S0092018.
Could we have the overhead on, please?
Sonia, do you have anything prior to?
Approval is recommended as proposed with no conditions. That's it.
Okay. Joe, floor is yours.
I sure hope I didn't miss the beginning of the meeting where you're going to move the new business to the front of the house.
And thank you for waiting.
You betcha. So, a couple of notes too. I did leave the meeting for a minute, and the doors were locked. And it took
Okay.
me a while to get back in, so I had the gentleman unlock the doors, so I don't know if that's procedure here either.
No, it's supposed to be an open door meeting.
Open door meeting, so. And I'd love to ask another question on a question on one other point when you were, since we were so intent on talking on trees in Monona, and I know you love trees, and Chad's learning how to love them here on the council. Is there a policy in place to replace trees after they've been hit and taken out? Because I notice there's fewer and fewer trees in a lot of those streetscapes that are hit by vehicles and stuff, and I never see them replaced.
That's an excellent question. And there is a policy in place, but it's something, we all as commissioners need to just let them know when we see stuff and see like that. I think it's
Okay.
excellent. As a citizen, you can certainly report that.
Yes, I see it all the time, so I noticed a couple this last weekend.
Yep.
So, okay. The sign here that we were proposing, It's an acrylic base sign. Mad Raps turned me onto this product. I wanted a aluminum cut corrugated look to it, and he showed a new product with the company he was working with. It does the same thing, lasts longer, costs a third of the cost as well. So that's the product we're proposing on the front of the building here in the designated space. That's what I'm looking to get approved.
Okay.
Pretty simple. Any questions?
Do I have any questions? Yes, Chris.
Not a question, a comment. I think it looks great.
That's it, okay.
Move approval.
Second.
You move approval.
Do we have to take it out of order, or can we do that at the first hearing here?
Well, this is consideration.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Second.
We have a second from Rob. We have a first from Kathy. All those, do we have any other discussion? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry, I had to wait to
I
skip
invite
things.
you all down and go over close.
Thank you. It's a good example.
We will be skipping item number B. Since that person went to bed. We'll come back to it. The person's no longer here. So we are now on C, public hearing on request by Rebecca Derringer Bugel for a zoning permit for a new use paper moon drama children's theater and rehearsal space at 1004 East Broadway, case number 20102019. Thank you for your patience.
I'm the last one sitting. It must be my turn. Hello. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for hearing my request tonight. Thank you for staying up this late with me. This is new to me. I am Rebecca Derringer Google. I've been a resident of Monona for 13 years. My husband and I have 2 children here in the Monona Grove School District, and I am the director and owner of Paper Moon Drama, which is a children's theater program here in Monona, which has been going on for the last 6 years. And what I'm doing here today is to request zoning approval for a new space. We have been ever steadily growing since I started about 6 years ago. And now I don't have enough room in my program for all the kids that want to sign up each year. Most of my kids return. I've served over 300 children in the past from 1st through 5th grade. And we've just kind of created a magical space for kids and parents, 1st through 5th grade. Most of our kids walk over from Winnequa. And we're looking at a space at 1004 East Broadway to lease a 2,300 square foot space and turn it into a performance and rehearsal space. Very similar to the Forum Room that's right across the hall over there, where we often perform our shows. We do about 6 to 8 shows a year, and I didn't create Paper Moon Drama as an after-school program, but I'd say that about 65% of our children do use it as that, because I wanted to create a theater program for my kids, and it's what I started doing 34 years ago when my 3rd grade teacher took my parents aside and said, I think you should really put her in a theater program, because I was directing all of my students and classmates in lots of different shows. And so the program that I created has been growing, and we also have been rehearsing at the community center. But they are creating their own after-school program next September because of such a greater need for after-school programming in Monona. But none of my kids jumped ship or signed up for that program. They all really are counting on Paper Moon to continue next year. So we really had to find a space. And I think the space on Broadway, along with the name being that we're a children's theater program being on Broadway, is quite cute, is the right space for us to be in. I think what your council is going to be most concerned with, we're not making any changes to the exterior of the building. All permits should be in place for the building as is. What we're looking to do will be taken care of with building permits on the interior of the building. I think the biggest concern for this committee is going to be in terms of parking. That's what I've heard tonight tends to be your focus. So with the parking throughout the day, though we have been focused on after-school programming, the Nelson Bus Company has confirmed with me that they will drop off the children for both Winnequa and GDS, and then their parents will be picking them up you know, they kind of come and go. And we're going to try and create a sort of a window where these parents will be picking up, and then 15 minutes later, these parents kind of start to pick up, so that the flow goes a little nicer. We will both want to expand our programming to different times of the day. I'll be hiring qualified other theater directors along with me. We'd like to unlock the doors at 8 a.m. and I put a request all the way till 10 o'clock at night. I do not foresee any of that happening unless it's, you know, a show week and we do some high school and adult programming later on. But I want to leave it open to what the community decides that they would like. We'd like to put out as much programming out there. We have so many requests for different programs that I've been unable to accept everyone that wants to, and my middle school kids that have graduated from the program have asked to come back, and they don't have a middle school theater program at GDS. So they've been asking for a space to do that too. So I'm just looking at different times a day. But the program as it is will have 2 spaces created, which
We have the overhead again, please.
somebody magical working in the back right there. There we go. Thank you. So we're going to have a performance space stage here, and then a separate rehearsal space over here created. There would only ever be 25 students in each space at a time with a director, and so along with the 2 staff members that would be present at the moment, and then sometimes I get high school kids who come and like to volunteer and help out with some of the little kids learn their lines. That would be a total of 54 people on a regular basis for most days. I do not think that we have a problem with parking with those 54 people kind of coming and going as parents or buses drop off children and then they pick up. The only matter of contention happens when we have our shows. We do about 6 to 8 performances a year, and that would be per program, and with expanding programming, there would be more shows going on. We only would do shows Saturdays at 2 o'clock, Sundays at 2 o'clock is kind of where we've done them so far. We would consider adding Saturday evenings or Sunday later on in the afternoon, and potentially Friday nights. That sort of helps a little bit with the traffic, being that the other businesses within that complex usually close for business at the latest at 6 o'clock and are not open on Saturdays and Sundays. So that gives us a little bit more parking. Most of our students, they don't drive. They're too little. And so it's their parents and it's their grandmas and grandpas coming to see their show. So they're usually driving together with brothers and sisters in a car. So it's usually more people per vehicle than your general standard of a two people per parking space. The theater that we're creating will have 95 chairs, and then there's 25 spaces for little kids to sit on the floor. So that, together with the people on stage, the staff members, makes a grand total of about 147 people at max capacity that we would be seeing on a Saturday or Sunday or a Friday evening. So that divided by 2, is in the 70s, and we don't have enough parking for that as is. I think that it is definitely a higher ratio of people per car. Generally, when they're here at the library, the parking spots here at the library fit our patrons on those days, because this is where we have had all of our shows in the past. So I don't see a problem, but I do have a call, and I was just on the phone today again with the UW Yahara Clinic, which is right next door, which has plenty of available parking and is conveniently never open during any of our hours of proposed show times. They close at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and they're not open on Saturdays and Sundays. So right now, the last person, I've talked to them a few times, and they don't think that it's going to be a problem to get a use agreement for parking, but I'm still waiting on an official kind of signed agreement with them. But if that comes into place, then we have more than ample parking for everyone at those times. So I have a lot of letters that say that we're wonderful and really great. I don't know if you read them all, but I cried when I did. But I think it's a wonderful program. I really hope to be able to continue. This is a big jump for me from a little, from a little group to a big space, but I really think I really think it's worth it. I think it's a great program, and I want to offer it to as many kids as possible. So I'll open up the floor to questions, and
We can do that once we close the public hearing, so thank
Oh.
you very much. So we'll close the public hearing and go to D, consideration of action on request for Rebecca. Sorry, Google for zoning permit for new use Paper Moon Drama, Children's Theater and Rehearsal Space at 1004 East Broadway, case number 2010218. Sonia.
So Rebecca did a really nice job of summarizing the potential parking issues. So as far as what's required by code, this would be considered a place of assembly in attachment 2 of our zoning code, and that requires parking spaces equivalent to 100% of the maximum capacity as determined by the building code. I still don't have what that number is, but in any case, adjustments may be granted under the provisions of the code where the applicant can demonstrate that a lesser amount of spaces would meet the needs of the facility. And I think we've demonstrated that a lot of them are children that aren't driving, and based on the hours of the operation, the biggest issue is those performance days. So if this UW Health use agreement were signed, that would be great, and I wrote in here that that would take away any concerns that I have. Otherwise, without that, my recommendation is for approval with condition 1, just confirming with building inspection as far as what's required. With the change in use to assembly, you'll want to make sure that they're not going to require, or if they are going to require, sprinkler modifications or things like that.
is that on the interior of the building?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
And then likewise, number 2, confirm what might be required with the fire chief, and they've both received your plans, I just haven't received back from them specific comments.
Okay.
And then number 3 is regarding the parking, that if it becomes an issue, especially on those performance days, we may require it to come back here for additional review.
Thank you. We'll now open it up for discussion. I'm going to go back over on this side. Chris?
Okay, first, I want to make sure I say that you did a great job putting your packet together. For someone that's never been here, never watched anything, I think you're fabulous. I mean, you have a lot of good information, not exactly what we normally get, but for someone that's never done it, well done.
I'm so glad. I threw it at the wall and hoped that it would stick.
Good
So.
stuff, good stuff. I have a couple concerns. I would respectfully disagree with all the businesses being closed during your off hours. The tavern's open, the laundromat's open, the car wash's open. The only one that closes is Allstate Insurance.
That's true. Oh,
Thank
that,
you.
okay, yes, okay,
So
yeah.
there aren't too many closing down. I was there today. The back lot, Tower Inn has a few people, is probably half full. The front was almost empty today, but nobody's going to the car wash when it rains and things like that. Have you talked to the building owner about where your bus drop-off will be? Can you do that in the back?
It's possible to do it in the back. It kind of, there's that row, if you were just there today,
Mhm.
you'll know that right before the back door is actually the pathway that the car wash cars
Yes,
come
and it's the
through.
vacuum stand. so
And
you
it's the
can't do that.
vacuum stand.
But here's my thought, is if you go in the back, you've got that remote lot for this building.
Yeah.
And like there's one area where there's 3 parallel parking stalls striped off, another one where there's 4.
Yep.
If one of those was just taken for a bus drop off, it would be a great way. Another issue I have is the parking, all the parking we talk about, the overhead's still there. All the parking we talk about, most of your parking is going to be coming from the back, not the front.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really nice to have a safe route for those kids to get across through there into this back door. If there's some way you could bring this across like that so people could come and go from that building from the back, because the vast majority of parking, especially for performance, is going to come from the back.
Right.
If you didn't want to pour sidewalk, you could put paving stones or something, you'd have to get them out across that grass, and then just stripe a crosswalk where all the cars come through the car wash. And then a couple more paving stones under that 20 stall lot.
Gotcha.
And then if you get the agreement with UW, you could put a couple more paving stones, and what you've given is a safe path for all these kids and parents and everybody to come in there. And I would feel a lot better if we could do, because I'm saying this because everybody's looking, normally ask for a site plan, but
Right.
we don't have
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
So we can talk about that, but it seems to me that to be able to do this, we should have a safe way to get them in the back door, because you are never going to accommodate at all of the parking just up in front.
That, and that's very true. And I'm glad that the parking lot is back there. I'm hopeful that UW will comply.
I thought about that, and I can't see why you wouldn't give them credits on every one of your little programs you print and tell them, hey,
Right.
you're gonna have
Thank you
advertising.
to UW.
Every program we have is thank you to UW for your sponsorship or your support of our played right.
I like the way you think, yes.
And why would they not want to do that? And they're supporting the arts. I mean,
Right.
everybody wants to support the arts. We want to support the arts.
It's good
We want to
practice.
find, we want to
That's
find a
their
way to
patience.
make you be able to be in here, even though you have way too many people for the parking lot.
Right, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Well, let me switch this.
Sure.
This is Sonia's overhead, and I don't know if there's going to zoom in.
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
How much you want?
Let's see.
You want to do it so that's the way you normally look at it, and that's your building right there.
All right, so this is Broadway, this is the front of the building, this is
Mhm.
all the parking that's available here. There were extra parking spots that I didn't actually include on the paperwork itself because I allocated them to Tower Inn as well. So there are an additional 8
Mhm.
parking spots in the front and a few extra parking spots in the back that I just kind of took off for Tower Inn. That doesn't buy us a lot more, that buys you like 12 more spaces than what I submitted. So if I don't know about this, I'm a little concerned about taking the kids across this path here. I would feel better if we did sort of and I don't know who does this, whether it's the city or whether it's myself and the property owner.
Yourself and the property owner.
Okay, whether we did, sort of
Take it on.
crosswalks here and tuck them around this way, if there was a back drop off. And then we'd make sure that there were teachers there to greet the bus, that the buses won't allow any children to leave the bus unless they see an adult present anyway. So, it just changes the place where we put the teacher.
It seems to me if you had a teacher there with them, it'd be a lot easier to bring them right in your own back door.
True.
But you might want to parade them around the tavern first.
Yeah, well, okay, let me put it that way. I'm hoping it's family friendly.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, I could, do you
Some of
have
the
a,
parents would love it.
do you have a particular, concern with the bus other than, with them dropping off in front of the building?
Well, I think it's gonna be hard to get in. This is a one-way road.
Yes,
So
so
your
they'd be
curb
coming
cut's
in
here,
here.
so how is the bus gonna get in this one-way slot? It goes only that way. How is the bus gonna get around? I mean, they'll have to come from the other direction, because this is your main curb cut, or
Right.
median cut is right here.
So I would guess that they'd be coming in here and
They
exiting
can't leave
here.
that way. That's one way the other way.
But isn't this,
Plus-
this is where the car wash,
No,
they exit.
It's no
here.
entrance, one way that way. Plus, even if a bus came at that angle, they couldn't make that turn back onto Broadway.
Okay.
That would be a tough maneuver. I'm just, the reason I mentioned, I'm a little worried about, and you need to talk about this with your business owner. If you have buses dropping off there, you pretty much block that entire front parking lot.
Yes.
For everybody, not just you.
Yep, no, that's a good point.
And you have a lot of opportunities. You wouldn't even have to take out these 4 stalls there. If a bus sat there in the middle, I think people would be a lot less concerned. These are patrons back here, and they've got to
Right.
sit for 5 or 10 minutes while the bus unloads. I don't think people get too antsy about that. But other businesses might not like you monopolizing the front parking lot.
I
And if
agree.
more than one bus comes, you have nowhere to put them.
True, and I just have to make sure that the bus can get both in and out of this.
Do they bring full-size school buses or the smaller ones? Do you know what size they're bringing?
I think it would be a full-size
Okay,
school bus.
I think they could make it, but your problem here is going to be, if the car wash is backed up, then they can't come in this way, then they almost have to pull
Right, they'd have to
Yeah.
reverse or,
And,
yeah.
and I agree with you, again, for
Yeah.
your parking, ample parking, as soon as you get that agreement and give them free advertising on your pamphlets. And
Yeah.
a good attaboy to UW
Right.
clinics, right? Why would they not?
Right?
And support the arts, and they can talk about that.
I'll let them know you said that.
Okay, great, they'll appreciate that.
Okay, so, I suppose I did, I agree with what you said as far as working together with Nelson Bus Company and the owner to find an appropriate drop-off location. And they're gonna know the turn radius better of their buses.
Yes, they will, and
So-
even if you can't get that, you're still talking 145 seat, more or less auditorium, and some teachers, and I think it's a little aggressive to think there'll be 4 in every car. So if you're talking
Yeah.
50 cars, 60 cars coming here, you're going to want a back entrance.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the kids, you're going to want some way that these people can get into your space without having to walk around.
Yeah, I think, I certainly like the front entrance better. I think it's more of a welcome, and I want to install a particular locking mechanism. It probably would be unlocked when we were open for a show at that point in time, but otherwise it's gonna have a buzzer system on it to keep the kids safe while we're in there. And I hadn't thought of doing that for the back. And it's certainly it's not as pretty to come in through the back door. But it's an option. But it's an option, and I don't know if you would require it or if you would prefer it. Exactly, what.
We'll find out. when we
Yeah,
get
we'll
to
find
that
out.
point.
Right, okay.
Kathy?
Yeah, to me, it's a good idea, but I wouldn't require it. I mean, if it doesn't work, I think you need to try it. I think it makes sense. I think you could make your entrance can be as attractive as you want to make it.
Yeah.
Inside and outside. And it's their own private little space, and they're not going in and they're not mixing with everybody else. It's their private space. So you could do that. Now, if it doesn't work, or if you can't get the bus company to agree, then I'm not going to require you to do it.
Okay.
But I think it makes a great deal of sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And also to tag on to what Chris said, and those little kids, many of them go to that clinic, and they should say thank you or write a thank you note.
Yeah, right.
I love the use. I think it's great. I think with confidence you'll figure out the parking agreement, and I hope that works out. As far as the entrance goes, I would not require it. I think that if things are going swimmingly and you're using the front door and things become a problem, then you'll probably be forced to find an alternative in the back. And I think you would do it at that time. But I would say see how it goes.
Okay.
But that's all I have.
Chad?
I think this is a wonderful thing you have going, and I don't have any concerns that are different from other people on the commission, but I think we can find a way to make this work, so.
Fine.
Appropriate of use, I think it's just fine. Same concerns regarding the parking aspect. I would encourage you to steer away from the front of the parking lot. For a variety of reasons. For the bus drop-off, I don't think it's a good idea. For the entry point, you're going to end up on a dead end with the bus, and buses don't like backing up.
Yeah.
The idea of entry, I would encourage you to really explore the back door as an entrance, and rather than having people park or drop off in the back and then somehow try to parade to the front. I just think it won't be as effective as coming up with a more desirable entrance from the back, although I understand that the building wasn't built to kind of access from the back. It was built to hide the stuff that's in the back. So you're just putting a different type of use together for that. So I think we've focused on the bus drop-off. I'm actually more concerned about parents.
Okay.
We're horrible at drop-off and pickup.
What? Yeah.
If you haven't noticed from all of the emails that we get from the school regarding, Winnequa and GDS and the high school about how parents cycle through to pick up. And I think that would be more important than the bus. That would be the easy one to solve.
Yeah.
But training these parents to go where you want them to go.
Yeah.
For the safety of children that are being picked up, coming and going, I think is the bigger issue.
Would you, do you see any problems? I mean, obviously with the available parking in the back and the front, right now, in my mind, I have everybody coming through that front door where I can buzzer the parents that I know and trust in, or if it's a pickup time, then there's a teacher waiting at the door and so on and so forth. So that's what's in my mind right now, because there's a nice window where you can see people too, and I'm just on a safety kind of thing. Would you require or need any sort of protocol put in place, or do you trust me to go ahead and put that forth? Because I obviously don't want any complaints made.
I think parking's like it's in your wheelhouse about like how you figure that out.
Yeah.
But what I think I'm hearing you is people are parking then coming in to pick up their kids versus the idea of the line where kids are coming to the car where a parent is still in the car.
Possibly. That's the way that it works now, but that has to do with the type of space that we're in here because they can't see their child when they're here in the theater. So they're coming in, I see the parent, wave
Yeah,
by.
it's almost a sign-up mechanism where
Yeah.
you may have something different on your hands, so just something to consider. Other than that, I think it looks good. I'm glad you're continuing. And then I see signage would come back at a different time.
Yes, I just, we kind of put this on the docket pretty quickly, and I wanted to make sure that we have zoning approval before I go forth and grab
And if I
bids for
remember
signage.
right, Sonia, this building has a signage package for the building.
It does.
Yes. So it will be.
Just to forewarn you.
It will be in line with, yes, those are not my colors, but I like red, but it's not.
She can suggest
Learn
something
to like.
different, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sign.
It will be in line with what they have already put up there.
The property owner can petition to change the sign code if the colors don't work. But that would have to come from the property owner.
But assuming it goes within the signage plan that's there, you can approve, it's a staff approval, she hasn't come back here.
When a sign permit accompanies a zoning permit, plan commission approval is required.
Don't accompany the zoning permit come in afterwards.
Okay.
Something to change in the sign code update, in my opinion.
And if it's consistent with the signage package for the building, even easier. Thank you. Looks great.
Susan?
Yeah, I agree with everything that said. I was really excited when I saw the proposal because I think it's a great idea. I would have somebody from Nelson's maybe come look at it and tell you what they thought, because they'll tell you where their buses can go and can't go and what they think would be the best plan. I'd try to get somebody out there to just look at it. Because it is a difficult area for me to see a bus easily maneuvering.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna have a lot of buses, I would assume, either. I mean, if they're assigned,
Should be two.
that'd be two, really, so it's
Yeah.
not, yeah. Yeah, and the parent thing, you may have to try to require that they park and come in and get, I mean, because you can't have people idle, and that will cause problems if they're idling in the parking lot, so, but, that, you've heard all that, that's just stuff to work on. Yeah, I think I'm good with it.
Okay.
Griff?
I think it's a great use. I think you have to explore the parking and bus placement and door angles, but I think you should be able to work it out.
Sure doesn't say very much, but I want to say I have one niece and nephew, and they were literally in theater from the time they were in diapers, and one of the two of them graduated from college in theater as a result of it. So I really thought about it. With that being said, do I have a motion?
Move approval, conditions as written by staff.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Ann.
Thank you so much. That is me.
We're on to number 7, reports to staff and commission members. Oh, sorry, forgot we had to back up to B. Item number B, consideration of action on sign permit request by Bob Lundgren, Lundgren Sign Service for wall signage and directional signage at Remax Preferred, 5320 Monona Drive, case number S0102018.
Usually we require the applicant to be here to present their request, and Bob was here until about 8:45. And I got an email from him. He said he had to leave to go pick up his son, and he wanted to comment on the staff report. So I'll just comment first on what I wrote. I recommended approval of the wall sign with no changes, and then pointed out a definition for the second page of the submittal, which are his operational signs. And these are the smaller signs that are currently located at the 2 driveway entrances. They were used by Bank Mutual, and the request is to reface them. It meets all of the size requirements, but the definition of an operational sign per the code is a sign that provides directions to parts of the site or building such as entries or exits, addresses of buildings, or designation of parking areas. And then I pointed out that landscape ground signs, on the other hand, are a freestanding sign which designates a project, business, or building. And if you look at the sign that's proposed, it doesn't really provide any directions at all and just identifies the business. So effectively, he's left with 3 landscape ground signs. And then I was hoping that the applicant would be here to clarify, but what he did say in his email was I could easily add an arrow and text stating enter and exit in order to comply with the requirements for the operational sign. That is all I have.
Totally agree with staff. It's 3 landscape ground signs the way it is now. Yeah. In all our operational signs throughout Monona, if you look at them all, we have started allowing small logos or small descriptions like what's on it right now. If you look at it, there's a small, tasteful Bank Mutual, and then it talks about what the operation is. But the way they're designed and proposed here, it's 3 landscape ground signs. If you go look at the site, they've got a monstrous landscape ground sign sitting there, and the one of these isn't, what, 15 feet away? It's way oversigned, and if we do this, we'll have everybody on Monona Drive wanting additional landscape ground signs. So I would agree that if it's an operational sign and it's necessary, then it can be that, and there can be a logo or a small identification on it like we've done for American Inn, like we've done, I mean, you can go up and down. I've drove up and down Monona Drive, done on all of them. And is the one on the other side, is that a one-way or two-way coming out by Walgreens?
I think it's 2-way.
That's what I think. 'Cause before it was one way because of the drive-through. It's not really even necessary anymore.
Yeah.
It was there because it was a do not enter, it was the exit for the drive-through. Now with no drive-through, if it's 2 ways, it's just over signage of a small frontage. And the last comment is, make sure you let them know that that is the mother of the condition we put on all landscape ground signs anymore about the glare from the sign. The original one with Bank Mutual was that big white sign, and it glared, and that's where we had to tone them all down, and they put in a big white sign. And then when the light comes through there, we're probably going to get complaints, and we'll probably have to ask them to reduce the opacity of it, because that's what we've done on all our, you know, the approval, the standard one we put in, it started on that site.
Okay.
Right there, because of that big white sign so close to the road.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So just to clarify, you're suggesting just adding the arrows is what you're comfortable with?
No, I mean, I want to see a sign. I mean, it has to
Okay.
be
You wanna see
it has to be a necessary operational sign, and then we allow a logo, a small logo or identification on it. And that's been probably only the last couple of years we've been allowed that, but we've never had just another sign saying, "Here I am, come on in." That's the the landscape, that one driveway, the landscape ground sign, it's right there. There's no way you can miss that, whose driveway that is.
Kathy?
So I mean, I would agree with Chris's comments that these need to be corrected. So where do we go procedurally from here?
Depends
to
on
the
the rest of the
planning
commission.
Yeah. Rob?
Yeah, if exit and exit, or entrance and exit is necessary, then I'm fine with it, but yeah, then I tend to agree that we don't, if it's not necessary, then no, get rid of them.
Chad?
Well, is this rendering, is this something we've already approved?
No.
The building?
The building.
It is? All right, I'll keep my mouth shut.
As it relates to the signs, I agree the sign on the wall-mounted sign is fine and meets the standards. The 3 landscape ground signs as they're proposed, although the directional, unless, and I can't see based on the use of the building, why a directional sign would even be needed. So even if there was even if there was an argument of I want to make one entry an entryway and the other the exit, I don't think the use expects there to be an entry and exit like a bank, where you really can't have people enter the wrong way through a drive-through.
Unless they were serving ice cream out of the back or something.
Then you have a different story. Yeah.
Right. Like a fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
Susan?
Yeah, I would agree, they don't seem necessary. I was just wondering if on their, the one landmark sign that they have now, this Rise title, is that a separate, or are they trying to advertise that too? Because that's the only place that appears as.
I don't know what it
I don't know.
means.
I mean, I guess I'd be comfortable with just the sign on the building and directionals only if they're needed, but then different style than this. Makes sense to me, yeah.
Okay.
I have no problem with one wall sign and no problem with traditional entrance and exit signs with a small logo properly proportioned. And we could approve that. If they want more, they can come back.
Do I have a motion?
Move approval of the wall sign and don't approve the directional signs as submitted.
Second.
I have a second from Kathy. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Now we're on to number 7, reports of staff and commission members. Staff reports.
No updates yet on the sign code because we haven't met yet. We are waiting for Vanderwall to put together the final contract, but Sierra's reached out to the 3 of you for a subcommittee meeting, so we'll be working on that. And then Memorial Day is our next meeting, so that's canceled. I have June 11th advertised on the website as tentative because it is the city's golf outing, and I know a lot of committee members like to attend that. So if there's anything really important, I'll keep an eye on it and see if we can have a meeting. Otherwise, I'm notifying people that that date is canceled. And then our next meeting would not be until June 25th. And we'll try to have the streetscape back on that agenda for the riverfront.
Excellent. Would anybody like any other information concerning development projects? Yes.
Sorry to do this, but now that the Quick Trip is completed, I know there was a space dedicated or granted a sign easement area by them for the city for our sign, our infamous sign that we had to take out because of the DOT. So do we have plans now to do something about that? Are we going to relocate that so we can get our reader board back up where it belongs?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
I have a couple comments on that.
Okay.
I reviewed the right-of-ways and the easements, and we might have hurt ourselves a little bit, because when we redid Monona Drive, we actually took property from PDQ to be able to get the one leg of the sign that advertises Broadway. And so now with the sign easement the way it is, what we have to determine, is that state right-of-way or is that county right-of-way? Because the state right-of-way is what's killed us. So if it's only county right-of-way, then we can put our new sign in there. It makes it a lot easier to place that new sign. I've got all the survey data on it that I can share with you.
Yeah.
But if that becomes state right-of-way, then I would think we should, before we go to put our sign in, we should try to vacate that again if we can.
Okay.
Because it makes it a lot easier to build that sign and put it in there with the 2 signs for Monona and Broadway.
I have a whole file with chains of emails with the state
sure.
and the county, and I believe it's the more restrictive, but we'll figure that out when
Okay.
we get to the design.
But it would be nice
Yeah.
now that that whole thing's done to get our reader board going
Yeah,
again.
at the very least, right now, where it's at is April Little has that on the list for adding to the capital budget
Okay.
later this year to fund it, and then we'll get into design and location.
Okay, well, I have some information if you need it. We'll
Okay.
get to that point.
Yep.
And then I'd like to reiterate Joe's point, it's a good point, is that we replace the trees that make our roads look so nice, that we have a program. I know I've asked before, and there's a budget, and there's so many trees a year, but keep an eye on it.
I'll talk to
We've had a
Dan.
few losses, but overall, Monona Drive looks pretty good. We've had a few losses there.
Okay.
Is it a 2-for-1? It's a 2-for-1. Every time a tree comes down, we have to replace it with 2? Or are you just talking about
We're talking about replacing the damaged ones, or the ones that
damaged
die that
ones
we
'cause
planted,
of
yeah.
cars and stuff? Okay. Any other information requests?
Well, I mean, I'll just say that I know we do have a public, or our forestry budget, and Public Works has tree replacement. We never spend the money that we have.
Really?
Yeah. Now, though there's concern that with the ash trees that are going to be dying off here in the next 5 years,
yeah.
that we'll have to increase that budget.
Yeah.
But we've been saving that budget for years of
Yeah.
it, for the ash borer.
Yeah.
It's here, I've seen
Oh, yeah.
damaged trees.
Yeah,
It's
I
definitely
know
here.
Jake is certainly, I mean, Parks is certainly dealing with a lot of it, so. I do believe we have no other business.
Move adjournment.
Second.
Thank you all.